Good afternoon and welcome to the regular meeting of the Public Health and Safety Committee for September 27th, 2023. I am Latricia Vital and I'm the chair of this committee. At this time, I will ask the clerk to call the roll so we can verify a quorum for this meeting.
Councilmember Wansley.
Present.
Rainville.
Present.
Ellison is absent. Palmisano.
Present.
Vice Chair Payne.
Present.
Chair Vita.
Present.
There are 5 members present.
Let the record reflect that we do have a quorum, and with that, the agenda for today's meeting is before us. There are 4 items on today's consent agenda. Item 1 is accepting a grant from the CDC for racial and ethnic approaches to community health. Item 2 is accepting a grant from the Department of Homeland Security to implement prevention strategies for countering violent extremism using public health methods. Item 3 is accepting additional grant funds from the Minnesota Department of Health for implementation of evidence-based family home visiting services. And item 4 is directing the city auditor to conduct an analysis of municipal strategies related to prevention and deterrence of auto theft. Is there any discussion on these items? Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Vita. I wanted to know if there was any staff that could speak to item number 2, the Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention Grant.
We have Tony Hauser here. Welcome.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, yes, thank you. I'm Tony Hauser. I'm the Supervisor of Emergency Preparedness and Response in the Health Department.
Yes. So I had the opportunity to read through the REA for this item, and it did identify some specific geographies or demographics that would be impacted, which I saw was mostly people of color, populations that live under poverty, populations where English is not their first language. But in the key text of the REA, it's around, this grant being used to combat extremism. And what we've seen over at least this past year in Minneapolis or across the country, where we're seeing a growth in extremism is actually around right-wing, predominantly white supremacist attacks. We've seen that with the attacks on mosques in our city. So while I saw the demographics kind of weigh to people of color in this, is there any, efforts to partner with community groups that's addressing the threat of white violence or white supremacist violence that's also terrorizing many communities of color?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question, Council Member, and to the Chair. Our focus with this work is not to do things that have been done in the past around, looking at risk factors, which have been proven to not really show much, or to reach out to specific groups because of past incidents that have happened. What we're trying to do, really the basis of our work for this, is to prevent extremism, so prevent people from going down that road by building social cohesion. So community involvement, community programs, that type of work. So our goal isn't to teach people how to identify someone who might be a threat. It's to support communities to create more programs and become more involved. Because we do know, and this is looking at this from a public health lens, we do know that people who are connected in their community are less likely to go online and start reading things and start believing things that might be more extremist. And then in the application, some of the demographics was those were around some work that's been done for our Resilience Hub implementation. And so, we're kind of roughly planning to work with the Resilience Hub host sites as hosts for some of these activities, and because they're trusted partners. But, this is also stuff that we're planning on doing citywide.
So what I'm hearing, though, is there's not a focus in also working with groups that are leading the charge to combat right-wing extremism that also has been manifesting. I'm hearing what's reiterated in the REA in terms of, again, working with community groups that might be, or it seems from the REA, more rooted in communities of color, low-income communities, non-English speaking communities, but not also an emphasis on the type of extremism that led to January 6th. So if that's what I'm hearing from you, and don't know if there's ways, maybe that's just asking Congresswoman Omar to say, can we make an amendment to the grant parameters around that? But it seems like you offer clarification on that point.
Yes, and just a little more information. We're still, working on the implementation piece and how, this work will actually look. And we have some great partners at the Center for Prevention, Partnerships, and Preparedness. I believe there's a lot of P's. Where was I going with that? I got distracted by the acronym. So we are going to do a lot of work with a lot of different communities and community organizations. We're trying to figure out what that scope will look like, because we can't do everything, but we do have a lot of ideas right now. So anything from, working with people in the community around Sabathani Community Center to, is there something that we can do to partner with some law enforcement organizations, to do like similar training. So we're not focusing on communities of color. We're looking at citywide groups.
I do want to emphasize what I can only go by what's written in the REA. And the REA listed near North, it listed East Phillips and Ventura, Central and Bryant. It also lists demographics that would be impacted, which had higher proportions rated for people of color or BIPOC and low-income folks. So it didn't seem to be citywide. It seems to still be focused on maybe certain aspects or certain perceptions around, and possibly outdated perceptions of what indicators lead to extremism for certain communities. And what I mentioned is what the gap is right now is around right-wing extremism. And we know we've worked with our civil rights department around this, of addressing hate crimes that's inspired by those type of dynamics. And it just seems, I think what you've shared thus far, that is not the scope of work that this particular grant focused on, which completely fine, just wanted that clarification.
Thank you. Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Hauser, thank you for coming down. I wonder if you could contact my office so we could speak offline. I'm really interested in seeing how the violent extremism that we're experiencing in Dinkytown and on the riverfront can get help resolved with this grant. I look forward to that conversation. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Palmisano. I think this is another question for a different item, Ms. Hauser.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On a completely different topic, I just wanted to mention to my colleagues about item number 4. Item number 4 is for our city auditor and for the policy and research part of our new city auditor's office. And here is some of the things that we've been talking through as to how this new division will work, and to build a work plan that's equitable and knowable to all of us. Because we are so close to the end of a term, that's not going to happen right off the bat. Councilmember Koski is bringing this item forward through the consent agenda of the Public Health and Safety Committee. I am bringing an item forward at Committee of the Whole next week, and I believe Councilmember Payne is working on an item for some time in the future, as well as probably others. But I want to say that our intent, and this will start next term, will be to have this function probably more like the audit work plan, where there will be a work plan and that staff will suggest based on the different topics at hand and perhaps the urgency through which they be researched, the order of that plan, and maybe suggest when we add something to that agenda where it falls on that work plan. That will be for council to then decide or change at our will, at our consensus. But I was hoping that we could have that organized before we started bringing these through individually. I think this is fine. I don't think we're going to have that many things between now and the end of this term. We also have to figure out with a term ending and beginning, just like our city ordinances, where there's things in flight that then end, lest somebody pick up and actively renew them the next term. We wanted to make sure that we have a way to bring any work that might be in process forward and end that project. So I just wanted to share a little bit about, this is the first one that we're seeing. This is kind of what a process development that you're welcome to be part of that conversation as to how we might work on this in the future. But these last few months of this term are going to be, I ask that you kind of pay attention to these things coming through, because evidently they're not all coming through committee of the whole. And we're just going to have to regulate ourselves a little bit as to what the audit department has capacity for. So it's not, it is about this item, but it's not about the content of this item at all. It's about kind of how we work on these things and what we give to this policy and research team. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wansley.
Quick question, maybe Council Vice President can speak to the legislative directive by Councilmember Koski, but this is my first time seeing a clause be added of any supporting materials will be made through the city's website no later than October 25th, of like having legislative directives, I guess recommendations be made on the website outside of LIMS, or is this directive basically indicating to be in alignment with that practice, that the information from this be available through LIMS?
Correct, Councilmember Wansley. That is part of Councilmember Koski's request for this directive.
Is there a way, I know, and maybe I'll just wait until full council for that language to be clarified, to say made through LIMS, which I mean, it's
Absolutely.
already has to happen, but
Yep,
yeah.
and she was gonna be here, but she's in another meeting, so we
Okay.
can definitely take that back up.
Okay, thank you,
You're
Chair
welcome.
Vita.
Thank you. And seeing no further discussion, I'll move approval of the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Sorry, what happened?
No, I wanted to just do aye on all except number 2.
Okay. And those opposed, nay. We have one nay on item 2, or more than one. Okay, thank you. That carries and the consent agenda is approved. The next item is receiving and filing a presentation on the work of the Minneapolis Health Department relating to food allergen survey. Here to present on this item, I'm so sorry. Please say your name for me. And Mrs. Weckworth, are you presenting also?
Yes. I'm Cindy Weckworth. I'm the Director of Environmental Health. This is Gebi Kukura. He's one of our environmental health specialists too. And he's worked closely with me on the allergen study. God, let me just get this running for you. Okay. And Gebi will kick us off.
Welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Chair Vito and council members, and thank you so much for inviting us to present our effort to raise awareness to make a safe dining out safe for people with food allergy. In the spring of 2022, our program started planning, making food allergy awareness campaigns throughout the city food operators. Our discussion topic today include food allergy overview, public health impact, survey, food allergy survey objectives, methodology, results in the educational material that we produced based on the.
Can you come in a little closer to the mic, please?
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you.
Results in the educational materials that we produced based on our survey result, and then we discuss about the future projects. First, I want to say just a little bit about the food allergy. Food allergy is over 170 food have been identified to cause food allergy reaction in the United States. Out of this, none of, by the time when we did this survey, it was 8. 8 food accounted for 90% of allergic reactions in the United States. This referred to us as major food allergy. They used to also call the big 8 allergens, now big 9 with the addition of sesame as of January 1st, 2023 of this year. This 9, at this particular time, 9 major food allergens include milk, egg, fish, crustacean shellfish, peanut, tree nuts, wheat, and soybeans, and sesame. What is food allergic reactions? This allergic reaction is immune system that occurs due to overreact of the body to protein in the food. This system varies from mild to severe and life-threatening, such as anaphylactic shock. This food allergy can affect multiple of organs in the body system. This includes skin, respiratory system, gastrointestinal, cardiovascular, neurological, which is manifested by different level of allergic reaction from mild to very severe. In the case of skin, mostly body rash, redness, like that. In the case of neurology, for example, a feeling of impending doom or anxiety. In the case of like cardiovascular symptoms, sometimes because of the immune system reaction, it can cause blood pressure to drop very rapidly, which may result in the like anaphylactic shock, loss of consciousness, even death. Food allergy are becoming the public health and the food safety concern here in the United States as well as around the globe. More than 32 million Americans have food allergy. Out of this, 5.6 million children under the age of 18 are allergic to food, which is roughly 2 children in every classroom in the nation. CDC reported that food allergy prevalence in children increased by 50% between 1997 and 2011. Every 3 minutes, food allergy reaction sends someone to emergency room. According to the FDA, allergic reaction causes 200,000 emergency medical care visits each year, 150 to 200 deaths each year in the United States. According to the current available research, over the last 13 years spreads, nearly 50% of fatal food allergy reaction were caused by food from restaurants and other food businesses. When we see other impacts, food allergy affects not only the person who is allergic to food, but also the entire family and other caregivers, especially like social gathering, dining out, psychological impacts, which may also affect not only the person, including the whole family as well. Economic impact, for example, paying extra money for substitutes or alternatives. Even there are also additional challenges, as the father of 8 years old who is allergic to 6 food allergy out of 9 major food allergens known in the United States. It is really beyond what everybody can anticipate, actually. Under American with Food Allergy Act in the Section 504, food allergy was also categorized as an impairment that limits one or more major life activities such as eating, even breathing, digestion, and generally even other body functions such as circulation and, as well. This also puts additional impact on the school system too, which according to Section 504, which requires schools to develop individualized health plan to assure the children are accommodated in the full school system too. When we come to the survey, our survey objective was to assess the knowledge, practice, and attitude of the food business employees about the food allergy, to assess the need for food allergy awareness training, also to know the availability of educational materials on the food allergy. The data collection was conducted by SurveyMonkey, which is used by throughout the city, which was in English and Spanish. We also promoted by the newsletter, and we gave out a business card, which is in English and Spanish too, during the inspection. Actually, we distributed the card to the inspectors so that when they go out to do inspection, they gave out to remind the operator to complete our survey. In addition to that, we also made staffs to tagline on their emails when they send out or communicate with food operators. The survey was open from September 9 to 2022 for about 7 weeks, and between this period we sent out 3 reminders by newsletters, in addition to the information that I mentioned earlier. In December, actually, we also promoted the addition of the sesame as a top food allergen in the United States. So we did some informations that to make sure the operators, the manufacturers, and other food businesses to aware that the food allergy, the sesame addition is coming up as of January 2023. With this one, we included some messages such as ingredient knowledge, why allergies are concerned. We also directed the operators to FDA website for further information. With that, I will pass to Cindy to present the other part.
Thank you, Gabby. So in looking at the information in our survey, one of the first questions we asked, which we thought was a rather relatively basic question, was how many major food allergies are there in the United States? And we were a little surprised to find that only 47% of the respondents in their food businesses were able to accurately identify that there were 8 major food allergens. When we broke this out further, we found that 41% of the respondents who were servers were able to identify the top 8. A bit of a concern, because I know as a parent of a child with food allergies, it's really the servers usually who are our first contact and help us navigate through the menu to identify dishes that would be safe to consume for someone with food allergies. And when we broke it out to look at chefs, cooks, and bakers, only 54% were able to identify that there were 8 major allergens. And the choices we gave them were 2, 8, 12, more than 15, and I don't know. We also wanted to understand if they could identify which were the top major 8 allergens in the United States. We gave them 16 choices. The United Kingdom has 14 major food allergens, so we gave them the choice of those 14 plus beef and eggs. And as you can see, most people were able to identify the top 8 allergens once they had the categories. However, you'll notice that all of the items were chosen. So in January, we took this information, and originally our goal was just really to re-promote that sesame was being added as a 9th major food allergen. But the survey really led us to understand that we really needed to promote all of it because there was kind of lack of knowledge about the top 8. So we used the FDA wheel that shows all of the top allergens. We talked about how serious allergens are. As Gabby mentioned, it can lead to anaphylactic shock and death for people who are severely allergic. We coined the term prepare with care, which we used in pretty much all the rest of our newsletters that went out also. We talked about the importance of labeling all of the ingredients so people can make good choices. And we updated our website with our new information, and we created some new resources in English and Spanish. So the first one is our pocket card. This was created for the front of the house, so the servers, so that when somebody asked them to assist them in navigating their way through the menu, they have some resources right there in their pocket. It's the size of a bookmark. It would fit in a back pocket, a menu order booklet, inside their phone case, whatever it is they may be carrying. Reminds them to take food allergy seriously, to make sure they tell the manager and the kitchen staff about the allergy, and that information gets transferred back, to avoid cross contact, and then in an emergency to call 911. Oh, and I actually brought, ta-da, this is our pocket card. And then we also created a poster for the back of the house. This is for the kitchen staff who are preparing the food. It has some of the prepare with care hints to help in assisting preparing the food for people who have allergens. And again, the focus was really making sure that we were identifying all 9 of the allergens. And this is our poster. Again, in English and Spanish. And then we have a flyer, really to alert all staff to be alert for the symptoms, so they knew what to watch for, and then again to dial 911. So then we started working on our April newsletter, and we really started digging into the data, and we especially wanted to take a look at training questions. So this question, have you had any food allergy awareness training? We were delighted to see that 64% of the respondents indicated they had had some food allergy training, and only 36% said they had not. So we kind of thought that for this next question, do you think an allergy training program is needed in this food business? We thought it would be that 36%, but it was actually double that. 71% of the respondents said yes, a food allergy training is needed in this business. And our third question asked, is there a food allergy awareness training program for employees in this business? And only 41% said yes. So recognizing that, we shared this data with the food businesses through our newsletter, and indicated that we would make it a top priority to find or develop training for food workers to be able to fill that gap. May contains Food Allergy Awareness Week, so we gave some love to our food professionals. This little box here is actually a video that they could click on, and it thanks the food workers for their commitment to providing safe food to residents and visitors in Minneapolis. We recognize that food workers have a deep love for food and the joy it brings to others, and that people with allergies really rely on the creativity of the chefs and cooks to be able to safely eat out. And that we, quite frankly, rely on everybody in the restaurant. And in addition to the video, we also posted a couple of social media, a couple of videos to social media, and we announced our free allergen training. This free training is available in English and Spanish. It's online, so they can take it 24/7 whenever it works best for their schedule. In June, we asked, should kitchen staff be knowledgeable about food allergies? And 99% agreed that, either agreed or strongly agreed that yes, kitchen staff should be knowledgeable. Then our second question in preparation for our June newsletter was, how confident are you that the staff working in this food business can safely provide a meal for customers with food allergies? And we asked them to rate that on a scale of 1 to 10, from very confident to not confident at all. And only 25% indicated that in the business where they worked, they were very confident that they could provide a meal that was safe for somebody with food allergies to eat. So then in June, understanding that concern about not having confidence, we provided some tips for back of house staff in the kitchen to assist them in being able to provide safe food for their customers. We shared with them, as Gabby had alluded to earlier, nearly 50% of the fatalities are reactions that were caused from eating at a restaurant or other food business. And so we really wanted to make sure we heighten that awareness of the importance of being allergy aware. So we provided a list of tips that addressed preparing allergen-free food, cooking, and then what to do if somebody returns their food. In July, we essentially made 2 statements and asked them to respond to it. The first one was food service staff have a responsibility to try to meet customers' special requests when it relates to food allergies, and 90% of the respondents either agreed or strongly agreed. And then we asked whether or not potential mistakes could happen anywhere in the process. And 12% of the respondents didn't know that a mistake could happen at any point in the customer's meal, such as, if you're taking an order, if it's not clearly marked on the order form, then it would get missed. Or if a food contact surface wasn't clean, then there may be cross contact. In serving, the expo might put something on there, like cheese or croutons or something, or they might use the same serving container for 2 different items. And then we're always impressed when people come out with 3 plates on each hand and are able to manage getting it to the table without dropping it. It's impressive juggling. The problem there is a lot of times the food will come into contact with food from the other plate, and there can be cross-contamination there too. So in July, then, we really focused our tips for the front of the house or the servers. And we really impressed upon them the importance of customer communication. Don't guess if you don't know if it has an allergen. Find out. Help navigate the menu so that they can find items that they can eat or offer substitutions. And then, just in serving allergen-free food. And then again, in this newsletter, we also amplified the training. In August, we asked if there was a designated person to answer their food-related questions, and 37% said no or I don't know. So we really put the spotlight on the importance of the jobs of the person in charge. That's actually a term in the rule for somebody being in charge in every shift. So we put together some tips for the person in charge so that they would know the importance that they are trained, that they provide training to their staff, that they implement ways to prevent cross-contamination and other tips for them. Oops. Okay. And then our September newsletter will go out today or tomorrow. It's getting pulled together as we speak. We asked if they have a written standard operating procedure for handling food allergies in this business, and 55% said no or I don't know. So we're providing some guidance for them on how to write their food allergen SOP. In October, we're going to promote ways that businesses can alert their customers about allergens. And we've identified some of those ways here just to give them some tips that we've seen along the way through inspections or best practices. In November and December, we plan to update our flyers. You may know this because Sesame was new, it's kind of pulled out, and we want to pull it into the circle and promote all 9 allergens equally. In Q1 of 2024, we're going to review the effectiveness of our communications plan, and then we also want to develop an assessment survey to determine how effective our allergy campaign has been in raising awareness. So in summary, when we look at our survey goals, we really were trying to understand what food workers think, feel, and do related to food allergies. And the information that we gathered really helped us target our messaging in our newsletters and our resources, and helped us identify educational and training needs. And I'd like to just quickly recognize Leslie Foreman. She is our community liaison. She pulls together our newsletters, she helps us find our graphics, she makes sure that we have our materials in other languages, and she makes sure that it's in plain language so that it's easy to understand. So my gratitude to her and her work. Do we have any questions that we can answer?
Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the work you're doing on the campaign. I see we have Councilmember Wansley in queue.
Thank you, Chair Vita. Thank you for this presentation. I'm interested to know, do you all happen to work with CPED to get these materials directly into the hands of businesses, or especially restaurant businesses that are licensed? That way it's getting to, as you identify, the owners themselves, and then hopefully there's the trickle-down approach of them giving that information to their employees, which is front end, back end. But this seems like a really good opportunity to collaborate with our business licensing staff to make sure that information is getting out. But just wanted to see, maybe that's already happening.
Yeah, and my staff are the health inspectors, so they're in the restaurants all the time. And the newsletter distribution list is the same distribution list that business licensing has, so we make sure that as they get new owners or operators, they get added. So yes, we work really closely with business licensing and Amy Lingo and her staff there. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sorry, I forgot to recognize the chair before I answered the question. My apologies.
You're fine. Thank you. And I don't see any further discussion, so I'll direct the clerk to receive and file the report. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next item is receiving and filing a presentation on the collaboration between the Civil Rights OPCR Division and the Unity Community Mediation Team. Here to kick off the presentation is Director Gillespie. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Vital, council members. I am really excited to be able to talk about this collaboration today. A few months ago, the Unity Community Mediation Team reached out to us to have a conversation about some work that they were doing in community. You know that they've been around for quite some time, and there'll be more about that later, but they reached out to extend an invitation to the Civil Rights Department, specifically OPCR, to be in partnership with them, an outreach and engagement opportunity around public health and safety, specifically in filing police reports of misconduct and how that process works. So The members of the team are here today, and I don't know if this is, oh, it is up. It's not in slide mode, but we can put it in presentation mode. But we have members of the Unity Community Mediation team with us today that are going to tell you more about this initiative. And then we'll come back and close out this presentation. But the co-chair, or the chair, I think, Dr. Ian, I made you a doctor. There you go. Reverend Ian Bethel is going to come and talk about the Unity Communication I can't say this, I get tongue-tied. I just should say UCMT. We'll come and talk about the purpose and the history and the members of the organization. And then the Secretary, Mark Anderson, will speak more about this specific initiative. And then we'll also have the Treasurer, Miles Wilson, who will come up and speak about the sites and the location where the initiatives are occurring. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Reverend Ian Bethel.
Thank you. Welcome, Reverend Bethel.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, and to the esteemed council members of this Public Safety Committee. We're grateful for this opportunity to come and to share today. Want to make one thing clear: we're not here working for the city of Minneapolis. We don't represent the city of Minneapolis today, but we represent the citizens of the city of Minneapolis. I'm senior pastor of the New Beginnings Baptist Ministries in South Minneapolis for over 30 years. I serve as the chair of the Unity Community Mediation Team, and also serve as the co-chair along with the chief of police of the Police Community Relations Council. And not to take up much of the time with me today, because we want to hear from other members of the team, but we have prepared for you a one-page purpose statement of the Unity Community Mediation Team that we presented to the clerk to share with you. And I'd just like to highlight just the first paragraph that since our inception in 2003, the Unity Community Mediation Team is fully committed to the transformation of public safety in Minneapolis through the full implementation of our Memorandum of Understanding with the Minneapolis Police Department and the Police Community Relations Council, which is a PCRC process, which was created in order that we might be able to monitor and to implement the Memorandum of Understanding. We really believe that there must be not only accountability, but there must be transformation, and there must be consequences, and through that, then we can have reform, both in the Minneapolis Police Department, but also in our community, and as part of our accountability as the Unity Community Mediation Team, we bring before you today our accountability as regards to Section 7 of the Memorandum of Understanding that was signed and also vetted by the City Attorney's Office, which clearly deals with the accountability of police officers regarding the complaint and the discipline process. And I just want to highlight that in order for the public to have confidence in the police department, the department must provide an effective and efficient means to file allegations of misconduct against police officers. The department also needs to provide a complaint with timely information regarding the stature of his or her complaint. This process is essentially not only for the credibility of the department with the public, but also because it provides the department with the information it needs to take appropriate remedial actions. And after the settlement of a recent settlement agreement, we noticed that that whole complaint was now placed with the Civil Rights Department. And so we immediately went to work so that we can be in full compliance with Section 7. And so today we have several individuals who will speak about the sites that we have around the city in diverse communities. And the Unity Community Media Team is one of those organizations in the city of Minneapolis that has traditionally and historically been made up of a myriad of diverse communities within the city of Minneapolis. And so we're about collaboration. We're not bureaucratic, we're not political, but we're about collaborating with anyone within this community so that we can fully become in compliance with the Memorandum of Understanding, not only monitoring it, but also working with the city with the settlement agreement, and then also working with the DOJ with their findings that will come. I will end with this before our speakers come. On this past week, we met once again with the city's attorney, and we basically said that we're collaborating, we're at the table, and it's in the best interest of the city to make sure that we hear the findings of the DOJ, see what they're bringing, and so that the Memorandum of Understanding and the court audit decree and the MOU does not overlap, et cetera, so that we can work together and collaborate for the best of the city of Minneapolis. And that's where our heart is, and we will be at this table, and we're willing to do the hard work that we have done, and we're willing to continue. And now that individuals cannot go to precincts and see someone at the desk and file a complaint, or even to give a compliment because of the numbers of officers, we are fully engaged now to implement and to be in compliance with Section 7 of the Memorandum of Understanding. And with that, we'll have Mr. Mark Anderson to come with further presentation. And then following that, one of our hallmarks of the Unity Community Media Team and this Memorandum of Understanding, a mistake that we made, and I will continue to say it, that was a mistake that we made in 2003 when we signed that Memorandum of Agreement before we took 2 years with the Minneapolis Police Department to develop this Memorandum of Understanding, is that we failed to involve more youth in the city of Minneapolis. And so our third speaker, we're proud to say, will be Mr. Miles Wilson of our Unity Community Media Team Youth Task Force, who don't sit behind us, they sit with us, because when I'm out of the way in another year or two, Mr. Miles Wilson and others will continue this perpetual work with our help, assistance, and our guidance. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for giving us a few minutes to talk to your committee and greet the committee members as well. I would just follow up on what our chair, Reverend Bethel, just said. We're about taking action. You know, I got involved in this work back in the year 2000 when a lady by the name of Barb Snyder died in her home, shot by Minneapolis police officers when she was in a mental health crisis. And Abuka Sanders that same year, a young artist here from the city of Minneapolis, died in another incident. And we community members went to Deputy Chief Greg Hestus. I don't know, it's maybe before some of your time, but we talked about what can we do together, police and community, to prevent this from ever happening again, and came up with the idea of CIT, Crisis Intervention Team. And Barb Snyder Foundation was formed to partner with the city of Minneapolis on this initiative, Crisis Intervention Team, improving response to behavioral health crisis in our city. And when you talk to other members of our team, you'll find that this is what we do. We take action, and this is what we're doing here today to try and improve our city. As Reverend Bethel said, it's about transformation of public safety in the city of Minneapolis. We need transformation, not just reform, but we need to transform. And as he said, we talk about it on the law enforcement side, but also on the community side. We need to transform in both those spheres. We've been involved in this. So Barbara Schneider died in 2000. 2003, the Department of Justice was here. I was involved in the first round of this mediation transformation. And monitoring this agreement, we had 106 action items in that agreement, which then was revised, and now we have the memorandum of understanding, which I think you all have seen, and which is really is an update on the original one. And again, now we're monitoring that with the police department, and that agreement was really the basis for the settlement agreement between the city of Minneapolis and the state of Minnesota Department of Human Rights. And so that's what we're doing. We're trying to take every opportunity. But this particular initiative that we're here to talk about today is a specific project that we have. We call it Community-Based Police Conduct, Complaint, and Information Sites. Community-based, because what we need to do is we need to be about the trust issue. There's a trust gap here in our city, and so we want to reach out to community members through the organizations that they work with, and all our diverse communities in our city, and we want to partner, as we've always done, try and partner with officers, with the agencies, with the departments in the city, and work together on this project, which we all none of us can do it alone. We have to work together. We want accountability for behavior, for actions taken, and to open the door and welcome those who have had an experience that they feel it just wasn't right what was done. They felt that somehow they weren't respected. They didn't have their rights honored. Give them an opportunity to come forward and have that investigated, and to try and resolve the situation, and to use that to move toward transformation, which is ultimately what we're all about. So. Let me just pass it on, because I know you have a full agenda here today, but Miles Wilson, our treasurer on our Unity Community Mediation team and the chair of the Young People's Task Force, been active with us since for the last 3 years, since George Floyd died, and done wonderful work. And now I'm going to bring Miles up to share a little bit more detail about some of these sites.
Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and council members. My name is Miles Wilson, lifelong resident of Minneapolis, born and raised on the north side, and a proud member of UCMT and the chair of the Young People's Task Force. So today I want to talk a little bit about, as we've been mentioning, about our sites that we've created. And before I do, I want to mention that the sites, when we mention community-based, that we're not just saying that it was on behalf of the community, but instead that this was included with the conversation and ideas from the community. Mr. Mark Anderson spoke to the trust that we're trying to help rebuild, and so we included the community on these conversations to help create these sites that we now have open. And I just want to mention that 3 of these are in North Minneapolis, and 3 of them are South Minneapolis and 2 are North Minneapolis. So we have 5 sites now open. One is the UCMT headquarters that's located over south. We have the NAACP Minneapolis chapter that's on Broadway Avenue over north. The Little Earth of United Tribes, which is over south as well. New Salem Baptist Church, which is over north. And then Cedar Riverside Opportunity Center, which is over south. And as Mr. Mark Anderson and Chair Bethel kind of spoke to, that these are from in diverse communities to help encourage the confidence to build that trust, as well as help kind of alleviate some of these barriers that we may see with filing, whether it's a complaint or a compliment, and that is things like language barriers. So we want to be inclusive of all different communities and help elevate the voice of our various and diverse communities in Minneapolis. And then the last thing I would like to mention on these sites is that that they were in partnership with the Young People's Task Force. Young People's Task Force as well. And what I mean by that is that about 2 years ago, when the Young People's Task Force was first created, one of the first things that we did was have a series of community conversations where we spoke to young people throughout Minneapolis in these various communities that are shown or reflected within these sites. And we spoke to them about if they feel safe. If they feel safe in their communities, if they feel safe with their police presence. And a majority of them spoke on the fact that they did not, whether that was in their communities or with the police presence that we had seen. So we worked with them as well to include them on the conversations on how to help encourage that trust and build that trust between not just us in the community, but us with our police department. And so with that, I want to thank you all for your time, and I'll hand this back over to Chair Bethel.
Thank you.
I'd just like to thank the members of the team. And so I will close this out today, Chair Vito, council members, and just say the Civil Rights Department, we've talked about the 3 E's in elevation, education, and engagement, and this covers all of those. And so the wonderful thing about this collaboration is that we know that we don't have the type of trust in the city that we would like to have for a number of reasons. This is a trusted organization. These are trusted messengers. And it gives us an opportunity. So we were really grateful to receive the invitation to go out and have conversation and tell the citizens of this city how we work on their behalf, to hear from them directly. And we could never have the kind of trust at this point that this organization has. And so we get to say, here's how we deal with accountability within the police department, and help people to understand, because a lot of the work we do in the city is not always accessible, right, to our citizens. And so this makes it accessible. We can explain, we can say, we're not, sometimes people think we're hiding things, and we're really not, but if we just keep pointing them to a website and don't tell them how to get there, this gives us an opportunity to have the conversation about some of the information that they would like to see where it exists. So this is one of the ways I think that as a city, we're going to build that trust back. That's so important. And so we are extremely grateful that the Unity Community Mediation team invited us to be a part of this. And it is a very diverse coalition in membership. And so they touch a lot of people in community. And we're also looking in our department, how can we in other ways share information beyond just reporting complaints to police? Like, we have our CID, our Complaints Investigation Division. If you feel like you've been discriminated against, what's that process? How can we walk you through that as well? So our OPCR director, Director John Jefferson, has been able to go out already 2 times and do a presentation with his staff. We're looking forward to the next presentations. And this is not just a one-off conversation or something that comes because of one critical incident. This is building a relationship with an organization that has trust in community. So with that, I will say thank you. Thank you to the members here. For those who didn't speak, if they would like to stand, I think that would be great. No? You good? Okay, good. But we really do appreciate this partnership. So with that, I'll just stand for questions.
Thank you. Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Vito. I just had a couple of questions. The first, I know we have a couple in-house initiatives that address police complaints or misconduct complaints. How do you imagine this work with the community group complementing the work that you mentioned, for instance, CCPO is also doing to streamline, I'm hearing, these complaints and make sure there's more accessibility and that they're also being completed, which has been a problem in the past. So
Yes.
interested to know how that work is complementing each other.
So I think as that work progresses, this is an organization that we can partner with to make sure that community is being made aware of, here are the things that are happening. And then hopefully to give feedback even before we finish, like we complete it, here it is. But even before, if we're building that relationships, we can gather feedback through this partnership. As Reverend Bethel said, they don't work for the city, they work for the citizens. And so to have that kind of perspective where we can say, here are the changes we are proposing, and to have that body then give us feedback on that, I think that's really important. But as changes are happening, to be able to share that information, to have this connection and relationship where we can share in a very authentic and genuine way, here are the things that are changing in accountability. So,
Yeah, and just to build off of that, because that's a lot of work that a community organization, are taking on. And I know we even provided funding for our CCPO to be effective in doing their work and doing training and all those things. I know there's not a fiscal note with the RCA, but is there also a funding component for this partnership too?
So, Chair Vita, Councilmember Wansley, there is not a fiscal component. There are some dollars that I hope, and I haven't made this public or anything, that I hope that we'll be able to use around community safety. So, but in the future, that might be something that we'll come back and ask for, is that how can we support the work? Because I think I hope I'm getting to the understanding your point. A lot of times we ask community organizations to do a lot, and we don't support that work financially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I do understand that. So that is something that we're considering. We also at some point may have to have more FTEs. I'm not going to talk about that as budget season, but the existing staff is going out to communities. So we may have a full-time liaison. All of those things, nothing's, I think, off the books. At this point, what we want to do is really get a good foundation and hear from our partner who started this, who initiated this conversation with me. How should we move forward? How can we support their work? Because the other thing I think we need to be extremely careful about when partnering with community organizations is not to co-opt their work, but to let them lead and drive that work and to be a true partner.
And then just the last question too, thank you for that. Clarification, which is great, thank you all for providing this flyer in terms of how residents can go and seek out support at these different sites. I did want to make sure we get clarification on the get involved piece, because if I was a, regular resident looking at this meeting and hearing our speakers talk about the role that they're playing in the consent decree, it could also be interpreted that they're a party that's also part of the evaluation process of the consent decree. And this, it reads monitoring MPD and the city's compliance with the community transformation agreements, and it lends itself, to my knowledge, and maybe our city attorneys is appropriate for this, there's currently only three key partners or parties recognized for the MDHR, which is the City of Minneapolis, Minnesota Department of Human Rights, the Police Fed is trying. So maybe just two for that one.
Okay.
And then the next consent decree, it would be maybe three with the City of Minneapolis, MDHR, and the Department of Justice. And it seems like maybe you see MT might be playing a community role, but just want to clarify that piece too, because I would read that and it's like, oh, are they part of the evaluation team of the consent decrees too? And knowing that's not in the settlement agreement, so just want to provide clarification on that.
Thank you for that.
Director, I think Reverend Bethel wants to say something.
Madam Chair and to Council Member, to be transparent, we have applied to be monitors of the state. Just want to be transparent. However, we are working by the memorandum of understanding that has been signed by the city and that's the police department, which we must be in compliance. We cannot expect the Minneapolis Police Department to be in compliance, and we're out of compliance. So therefore, by nature of that memorandum of understanding, we as citizens have every right to not only monitor the memorandum of understanding, but whether we are chosen or not with the state, or whether we're chosen or not with the findings of the DOJ, we have historical relationships with both entities. As a matter of fact, the state has used our intellectual property. If you read the settlement from the state and compare that with the MOU, and our city attorneys would say the same thing. They look the same. And so we were not that community organization that said to the state that you gave credit to other entities that you met with, and the state met with us monthly and went over our MOU for them to bring together their findings and come to a settlement. So in no way, and I want to make that clear and be transparent, in no way are we saying that to this community or to this esteemed council committee that we're out here saying that the Unity Community Mission Team is one of the monitors monitoring. And I want to make that very transparent and very clear. But however, we as citizens will be at meetings. We as citizens will demand information. And in that way, we are monitoring. And we're monitoring on behalf of the citizens who can't come to meetings, who are not able to understand or comprehend. And that's why, along with these sites, at every meeting that the Unity Community Mission Team has, which is weekly, and now we probably will move bi-weekly, and also every monthly meeting on the third Tuesdays of each month, now from 10 to 12, with the PCRC, the Police Community Relations Council. Those are always open to the public. Those are always open for questions from the public. And so by nature of the work of the Unity Community Mission Team, we are monitors, and we will monitor.
Which is, I think what you just explained would be great maybe to add to this. When I see this at first glance, it does read as you're already the monitor, just first glance. In that context, what you just provided, which is great,
Right.
isn't expressed here. So I don't know if you printed like final copies of this as of yet, but if there's even like some things to add, like what you just shared right here.
Okay, okay, thank you so much for that. And Mark Anderson will take a note of that.
Thank
Madam
you.
Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Is that it, Kevin? Okay. Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My remarks are just a note of thanks to you, Reverend Bethel, and Mark Miles, and Mr. Flowers. Before you leave, I do want to acknowledge you and thank you for your time, too. So we all have to get
Okay.
back to work. So I'll be brief. You've taken a difficult road to travel as we all help heal this city, and your efforts are appreciated, and I look forward to helping you. So, but thank you for coming down today. Thank you for all you've done. It's, as I say, it's difficult to heal a city that's gone through the trauma we have, but you're trying, you're doing a really good job. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just also wanted to say thank you so much, Director Gillespie, and thank you to the Unity Community Mediation Team for coming to co-present today on the work that you are doing. I think it's important that the people of Minneapolis understand how they get to file a complaint and also the process that goes through. So I support the work that you are doing. You definitely have a niche in this work, working with folks on process. A lot of times the process is what's the deterrent and why folks don't get engaged in the way that we really need them to be in this city. It's a big part of accountability. So I support the work you all are doing. Thank you for the presentation today, Director. And of course, my office is here to help as long as you all leave our flowers at home. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Vita. Thank you.
I'll direct the clerk to please receive and file. The next item is another discussion item. The next item is receiving and filing the second and third quarter updates from the Office of Community Safety and its 5 departments. Here to kick off the presentation is Interim Office of Community Safety Commissioner Lee Sheehy. Welcome. Thank you all so much for your patience.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, since it's quarter 2 and 3, I thought it wise to have somebody who was here during quarter 2 or 3 to present this portion of it. I will be at the end presenting the fourth quarter and the future, so I look forward to that. But with that, I'm going to ask Chief of Staff Jared Jeffers to present, lead the presentation. Sorry for that.
Chair Vita, council members, good afternoon, and thank you for allowing us the opportunity to present on our second and third quarter updates for the Office of Community Safety and its 5 departments. We switched up the order a bit from the last time. We'll have our 5 departments kind of lead off, and then we'll go into the Commissioner's office and where the Office of Community Safety is going into the future. So with that, I will hand it over to 911 Director Joni Hodney.
Good afternoon, Chair Vito, council members. I'm Joni Hodney, the director at Minneapolis Emergency Communications, otherwise known as 911. Normally, we start this off with a mission statement, but we've been spending the last couple of months working with Human Resources to develop a new mission statement as a team, as a group. But basically, we are trying to grasp the concept of providing the critical link between public safety responders and the communities we serve. The beginning of the year, we still had 2 open positions in the management team. In September, we filled the final position of assistant director, which has been vacant for some time now, and are fully staffed in the admin and management department for the first time in 2.5 years. The supervisors on the floor have been, we're authorized for 8 supervisors on the floor. They've been operating with 5 for over a year. We are currently in the process of bringing on board 2 more supervisors. One starts this month, one starts the next month, and we'll have supervisors up to 7 full-time supervisors. With 1 additional one, they'll actually be fully staffed in supervisory that's in a detailed position right now. The management team have been spending time together, assisting dispatch with answering calls due to the shortage of the staffing on the floor. With the upcoming classes that we're going to be bringing into the center, the goal is to have the pressure of the overtime for everyone, floor staff and leadership, being able to be lifted and be able to let them feel a little bit more work-life balance as we bring in some staff. Management and leadership are participating with Human Resources on leadership training to strengthen the skills and become better mentors and leaders. And the dispatchers and call takers on this are broken down into 2 job classes, and they're generally counted as a total FTE. We're allowed 69 FTE in the department. At the time of assembling this, we were at 47 call takers and dispatchers out of 69. We have been seeing an increase in qualified candidates over the summer. This gave us a class of 5 that just went onto the floor from October that will now be with coaches and working. October 2nd, Monday morning, we have another 6 starting. In November, we have 8 in process to complete their backgrounds. With these classes, we're hoping to bring our FTE to the floor of staffing to 56 to 60 employees. In addition to that, we have started a pilot program with the union to work with part-time employees. And we have 3 currently hired. We have 3 more that will be starting at the first of the year. Some of them are converting from full-time employment to see how maybe the option of some part-time employment will help to fill the gaps where we're feeling the overtime burdens. As you can imagine, this difficult staffing period, coupled with the long hours for staff, their morale has had struggles, they're tired, and we are committed as a management team to continue making our staffing numbers the #1 priority so we can build and strengthen the work-life balance for them. Keeping into consideration the potential attrition rate, there'll be another class in April to help fill any gaps that we may have. Correction on that. There's a class in January and then another class in April to help fill any gaps that we might have from people we lose that come in this fall. Our second and third quarter call volumes, we're seeing a pretty steady trend. 911 takes approximately 600,000 calls in a year, and it's remaining fairly steady to that. You're going to see a large increase in call volume during the months of May, June, and some of July. Part of this was due to a software update that was done on Android phones and was creating large pocket dials into the 911 center. We were seeing hundreds of additional calls a day that were giving us, we were having to take the additional time to call back. They take longer to process to make sure that nobody on the other end of the line needs assistance. Since then, in July, Android did come out with a fix for that, and we're seeing a great improvement to that. So while you see our numbers have increased in call volume, they are going back to a steady rate again. We're also looking at some new technology that's going to be moving forward, and with the automated abandoned callback is one of the technologies we're looking at. It will help us to dial back some of those calls that have been pocket dials and help us determine whether or not the person on the other end of the line truly needs assistance. Our goal is to have that implemented by the end of 2023, and be able to take some of that burden off of the call takers. Because of the staffing and the additional calls that came in, our call answer times are still not in the area that we would like them to be at. We would like to get back to answering 90% of the calls in 10 seconds or less. Right now, we're averaging about 76.5% of the time we're getting to them in 10 seconds or less. With the new staffing and some of this new technology we're bringing in, we're hoping by the first quarter of 2024, we will be able to get back to achieving our 90% record. Our training department has been busy hiring staff, training the new class, preparing training for existing staff, and beginning the first quarter, we are going to be doing some internal training because we had an update to our software that's going to change how our current staff is seeing and using the software that we have. Our ASAP to PSAP, which is Automated Secure Alarm Protocol, and a PSAP is what a dispatch center is referred to as a public safety answering point, is due to launch the end of November. This will save about 30,000 calls a year coming into the dispatch center, as they will come directly from the alarm company right over to a dispatcher and bypass the call taker having to pick up that phone and take that call. So some of the technology that we're looking at and moving into is going to start relieving the burden on some of the call takers as well. Other technologies that are up and coming we'll be looking at in 2024, 2025 has to do with our next gen 911. Next generation 911 starts to bring into dispatch centers more text ability, photo ability, video abilities. These are all things that as a state we're looking at trying to get prepared for. And we will be moving into that technology together in many of the dispatch centers. Also the ability to be able to communicate from dispatch center to dispatch center. Right now that's done through a phone call, and we're looking at technology that's going to allow us to put a call into a computer system to send it to an agency outside of the city of Minneapolis, if that's what happens. But that's all future technology. That is pretty much covering the staffing and what we're doing in the 911 center at the moment. I will stand for questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Vice Chair Payne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know that there's been some interest in examining the classification of our call takers and dispatchers, and my understanding is they're not actually designated as first responders. They're designated more aligned with a customer service representative, and we know the reality of that work is it's much more challenging than, you know, taking care of people's returns when they order the wrong size, right? Do you have any insight or updates on those efforts? And I'm even just trying to understand the roadmap as it relates to what the city's role is versus state, so on.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Payne, thank you. I appreciate the question. This is something that's very near and dear to me as well as we try to move as the state forward to bringing them into a first responder classification. I will be reaching out to many of you as well as my partners. I just last Thursday received some documentation of how they would like some letters written to be able to be presented to some of the state legislation that's up and coming probably next spring to try to help move this forward again. It's going to have to be done in unity for the state of Minnesota because it will change the classification for the all of the dispatch centers. Internally here, the things that we need to work on is changing the classification from a call taker and dispatcher to a public safety telecommunicator, which is going to be a process to work through with the union and human resources. Won't change their responsibilities. The other piece is there's some unified training that's going to be done statewide, and we have to be sure and meet that training in each department in order to be classified as a whole as a public safety telecommunicator. So all of that paperwork has been turned over to my training manager, and one of his main focuses is in 2024.
Yeah, I'm very enthusiastic about those changes, and I want to help in any way I can, so definitely reach out to my office. And I think it's really important that the public understands, you know, there's a lot of conversation about the police staffing shortage. We're in a crisis in 911 as well, and, you know, there's a lot of perspectives on what the future of public safety looks like. We can't deliver on any of those visions without a really high-functioning 911 center. So I really appreciate the work that you're doing, and I'm hoping that we can partner together to make life a little bit better for the folks working down there, including can we have deeper conversations about getting them into the public service building where they can actually have some windows in their office space.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And we are looking at doing some move of our center, but it won't be over to the public service building. But we will get windows.
Okay.
Thank you. Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Chair Vita. Director, in terms of the staffing levels, of course, it seems a priority of doing retention. And I'm really hopeful that with the collective bargaining agreement that we just passed that has those retention or recruitment bonuses, hopefully that helps with the increase of applications. But recognizing since 2020, there has been, it seems like a 30% decrease in dispatchers. I'm interested to know what, in your opinion, would be the ideal number to keep a healthy staff, you know, with the city long term, kind of what's that gold standard?
So right now, I think we're good with if we could get up to the 69 employees that were authorized. Now, I say that for now because you may see me standing in front of you in the future at a budget meeting asking for more FTEs. The reason for that is right now I need to get the department back to focusing on what we already have. But there seems to be a lot of change in not just technology, but throughout the city on the things that they need to have handled that comes through the dispatch center for communications out. Behavioral crisis response, animal control, traffic control are all running through our department. And in order for us to continue to take on any more of that, we definitely would need to reevaluate staffing.
That's really great that you mentioned that. I know we'll have the remaining of this presentation probably from Interim Director Sheehy, where we're talking about investing in other safety, you know, models that yielded BCR, and taking into account that has an impact on 911 if we're talking about adding that as a, you know, additional 911 option. So thank you for even flagging that piece of, you know, we have currently the Office of Performance and Innovation that's carrying out a pilot analysis, for instance, around some of these problem nature code like domestic violence. recognizing that that should also be done in collaboration with you all to do like a staffing impact of like what it would be needed to support you all too, and if that's additional FTEs, even the training around that. So thank you for flagging that piece too of as we're investing in this comprehensive side, adding unarmed safety workers, knowing that 911 staffing levels plays a critical role in us being effective in that work.
Madam Chair and Councilmember Wansley, thank you. I appreciate that, and we certainly are happy to get involved as we evaluate those problem nature codes.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you. And I just wanted to say, you know, employee wellness it's a big issue in your department in particular, because the staffing levels have been down for several years, and you and I have had lots of conversations about this. I'm happy to see the numbers go up, and I'm happy to see, you know, the goal of 69, but I would love to make sure that we continue having conversations about employee wellness and, you know, some specific things that you hear from your team on what they need, you know, as a part of the workday, and making sure they get days off of work so that, you know, they can take care of themselves. And, you know, like, what are some of the things we can do as council members to support the department? How outside, I mean, you're saying like, oh, you'll see more FTEs. We're kind of used to that. You know, like when someone brings their budget proposal, they have more FTEs. We get that. But I think, you know, just over the couple of years that I've been here, what I've learned is 911 is a unique department. You know, a lot of people, just the way they have to pick up the phone, I could never do it. You know, it's a hard job. It's taxing, and it can be hard on not only them but their families. So I'm really looking forward to figuring out how we can support you and your team, you know, holistically, and not just including more staff. We need that, but I think we need to do some additional work to, you know, show your team we care. The windows are great, Vice Chair Payne. I agree. I've been down there. I mean, it was a hard work environment for me to be in for a few hours, so I understand that. But I do think that, you know, we need to keep having conversations about how we as a council can make it better. So thank you so much for the presentation.
Madam Chair, I appreciate that, and the windows are going to help a lot. I think that's going to help. We're also changing our schedule, so we'll be doing a different schedule for the staff next year, which hopefully will ease the burden a little bit on what they're currently doing. And my new assistant director is very involved in employee well-being, wellness. She's done several classes through the city. She's doing it also throughout other community events. So I think we'll see some improvement there as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to the Emergency Management Department.
Chair Vita, council members, thank you for having me here today. My name's Kate McKay. I'm the Assistant Director for Finance and Administration over in Emergency Management. I wanted to start off just by looking at our mission statement here. We've showed that before to you all, but really based on our mission statement, there's 5 areas that we focus on: how to prevent, mitigate against, prepare for, respond to, and recover from either complex incidents or disasters facing the city here. We prepare for those areas. We have 10 different capabilities that we focus on in our department, and for each of these capabilities, we've developed performance indicators that on a monthly basis we evaluate how we're doing to make sure that we can complete our mission and focus on those 5 areas there. For both quarters 2 and 3, for all of these capabilities, our indicators show that we're performing as expected and are prepared. Looking at some of the highlights we have from quarter 2 and quarter 3 here, we, in terms of training, actually in first quarter, we launched an employee preparedness course through COMET. I'm happy to report that through August of 2023, we'd have 76% of all city employees had completed the course. In addition, as part of our NIMS Reset project, we've been offering a number of courses, including 16 different position-specific courses that covered a wide range of topics from command, logistics, operations, planning. We had a public information officer course, all of those that we've worked with, primarily staff from within fire and police, along with emergency management. There were staff from communications as well. So we've had, I believe there were 35 different individuals from various departments that completed those position-specific courses. Moving on to exercises, we have our Assistant Director of Risk and Resources works with the various city departments to conduct continuity of operations tabletop exercises. So each of these departments has a continuity of operations plan, and he works with them to review their plan and then walks through an exercise to essentially test the plan and make sure that we would be able to operationalize it if there was a challenge that faced that specific department. We conducted a damage assessment functional exercise where we partnered with various city departments. So we had Public Works, CPED, Reg Services, the Assessor's Office, Finance, where we worked together to basically test our ability to analyze damage assessment data and then the need for an emergency declaration and kind of walk through what that process would look like. We also conducted a emergency operations center functional exercise. Again, we brought in staff from various departments. So we had police, fire, finance, procurement, and a number of other city staff there for that one. We based that incident on a large water main break to see how we would respond to that. And we practiced having an incident support plan that would cover multiple operational periods. In terms of public education, this year we were able to hire our communications and outreach person. As a result, we've been able to focus more on some of that outreach for the citizens here in Minneapolis. She's offered a couple Ready Camps already and is planning another one here for October. So a Ready Camp, it's a 2-evening course where we work with residents who signed up to cover different things they can do to help prepare themselves and their families to deal with an emergency. Some of the partners that we've had come in, we've had staff from 911 come in and talk about what that looks like. We've had staff from Excel talking about that, making sure people have medications, and just basic first aid and survival kit ideas. So excited we brought that back. She was also able to provide some updates to our website and provide additional resources to the public regarding preparedness out there. Looking ahead into Q4, we are starting to engage in our process for planning for 2024 now. What we do as a department, we had our work plan for this year. We kind of reflect on the work we were able to complete, and then we start planning for what our projects for next year will look like. So we do create within each of our sections basically our work plan of how we're going to support and build out additional functionalities, capabilities, what we're going to test for the next year. In Q4, we'll be having a enterprise-wide continuity of operations exercise that's currently in the planning phases. So what that means when I say enterprise-wide, it means we're not just looking at one department, but some sort of incident that would impact the entire city, where multiple departments would need to be involved in order to ensure that we were still able to provide the services our citizens need here. Things that we focus on are how we allocate resources, establish communications, and establish and maintain a common operating picture. So does everyone know what's going on? We'll be participating in Winter Hazard Awareness Week, and that will be a partnership with the Minnesota Department of Public Safety, the National Weather Service, as well as some other internal partners here at the city to help educate Minneapolis residents on the risks associated with winter weather so they can be prepared. So Chair Vita, with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions people may have.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Vice Chair Payne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For these functional exercises, my background is not in emergency management. I was a lifeguard at one point. You had to do these functional exercises, right? And I remembered doing traction the wrong direction during our big test, and I folded around on my back and we passed, right? But like, you make mistakes during these functional exercises, and hopefully those lead to refinements in process, methodology, communication. What's the cadence of these functional exercises, and to what extent are we changing our methodologies in response to the lessons learned through those exercises?
Chair Vita, Councilmember Payne, thank you for that question. Learning from our exercises and any incidents we have is a really key component of our success in emergency management. So following each of our exercises, we conduct a hot wash there on scene to basically discuss what went well, what didn't go well, what can we improve for the future. We have people on site that are evaluators, that their job is to see, hey, you guys have this plan over here, are you following this plan? And so based on all of that, the contractors that we've worked with will write up an after-action report with recommendations on what we need to adjust. And then based on those recommendations, we might go back and review and adjust a plan. We might provide additional training. So we've got our training coordinator. But basically, we take those into consideration and then make adjustments as needed.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, and thank you for the presentation.
All right, well, with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Tyner here.
Welcome, Chief.
Thank you. Thank you, Committee President Vito and members of the committee.
I like that, committee president.
I know, right now. Well, I see the flowers, so I said, must be something special today. Okay, so I will start out with our mission statement. Employees of the
Chief,
Minneapolis Fire Department.
every day is special with President Vita. Is that what you're calling?
Thank you.
Committee Chair, I'll correct it for the record. Sorry. Mission statement is employees of the Minneapolis Fire Department are thoroughly trained and ready to protect their lives, property, and the environment by rapidly responding to emergencies and hazardous conditions. We are committed to prevention by proactively working with the community to reduce risk to life, property, and the environment. Our motto is serving the community, enriching the city. In the second quarter, these are the projects that we were able to complete. The first one is the MFD EMS Pathways Academy. As you all are hopefully aware, the EMS Pathways Academy is an internship where we train people on EMS, emergency medical services, get their EMT certification, and then from that program, get them into pathways into EMS careers, firefighting, paramedics, EMT, and EMT dispatchers. I'm happy to say that we were able to hire some of these recent graduates who graduated in June into our cadet class that we just began on Monday. The Maury Safe Stations Opioid Peer Recovery Project is another project that we were able to get off the ground. We were able to open that on the north side in Fire Station 14. The Safe Stations Opioid Peer Recovery Project provides a safe place for people who are looking for treatment or to get into treatment from opioid addictions and really other problems too. They even deal with people that need housing assistance or other things and get them into the treatment that they need. The nice thing about it is that the fire stations provide a safe place for people to come to who are looking for help, and the staff there is really engaged in meeting people where they're at and giving them the type of treatment that they want and that they need, but what's going to be more successful for them. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. The Engine 10 pilot program, we were gathering information as to if opening another fire engine, Engine 10 in this case, would be justified. And I'm happy to say that at the end of June, we were able to incorporate that into our current response model. So Engine 10 is now a permanent fixture in the Minneapolis Fire Department and responding to emergencies as we speak. Staffing is always a concern with us. We were able to complete our last cadet class in the end of June in the second quarter, which added another 20 people to our ranks. And as I mentioned, we just started a new cadet class of 21 on Monday. We completed leadership development courses for the captains ranks, captains and people who are looking to be captains. We created a leadership development course that was really focused on first responders, firefighters, and the leadership needs that we have as a fire department. I've gone to a lot of leadership training. I'm just kind of, I don't know if I'll call it a hobby, but it's something that I'm interested in. But a lot of it is really theoretical in nature, but we have some very specific needs that are very specific to first responders and emergency response. And so we were able to work with a vendor to create a program that really spoke to that and prepares people for leadership in the fire service. And so we were able to do our second captain's cohort earlier this year. That's, again, graduated in June. We have a chief's cohort that is starting, which is really on my next slide, next week. Our first responder specific mental health services is something that we have been targeting, and we were finally able to complete that contract just here in the last week. The contractor is a program called PAR 360. They provide resilience training. They also provide personal check-ins and help people get help they need if it goes above the level that they provide into psychologists or other mental health programs if needed. We didn't know this when we started pursuing it, but if you're probably aware, the state legislature passed a bill to deal with first responders who are dealing with mental health issues, and part of that was in order to be eligible for reimbursement, you had to have this resilience training and all of these other things that we had been working on for over a year, and we got it done just in time without actually knowing we were going to have that done. So that worked out really well. And that program is actually going to kick off next week, next Wednesday on the 4th. Finally, expansion of the Emergency Operations Training Facility. We haven't expanded it yet, but we were able to secure the funds to expand it in the latest legislative session. So that's something that we were able to accomplish in Q2. So now we're working with Property Services to actually put out the RFPs for the design and construction contracts and all of that good stuff. Third quarter projects. I talked about the cadet class that we started on Monday. They will graduate in late December. All of these people that were in this current cadet class, they have their emergency medical technicians certifications already, so that's going to shorten up the class and we'll be able to get them out by the end of the year. Image Trend Fire Reporting Software is the software that you very kindly gave us funds to pursue in the last budget cycle. That contract with IT has finally been completed, and they are working on the implementation of that right now. Once it's been implemented and up and running, we will begin the training of all the officers to be able to use that software, and that will replace Firehouse, which is our national fire incident reporting software. I mentioned the Chiefs cohort of leadership development is starting next week. I mentioned the Emergency Operations Training Facility project. We're doing the planning and starting the bid process. That will add specialized rescue props that we can use to train on regionally and for our own USAR team and heavy rescue teams. And we talked about the mental health services, so I will move past that. Moving into 2024, we're going to continue progress on that EOTF expansion. That's going to be a long project, so I think we'll be lucky if we complete it by the end of 2024, but that is the goal. Creation of a new civil service hiring list. Our current civil service hiring list is due to expire in 2024, so we're going to need to create a new one. But before we just start taking applications and testing, we're going to take a really hard look at the scoring system that we use to evaluate applications to make sure that we're really looking at, the right things. And so we're going to start by engaging our current firefighters to talk about what type of things we're looking for in an employee, along with HR and, of course, the administration, and we're going to make sure that we're measuring the right things. We're going to do another EMS Pathways Academy in April. We will probably start taking applications in February for an April class. We're going to do leadership development. Again, we try to do a captain's cohort and a chief's cohort every year. However, in 2024, we don't have that many chiefs, right? There's only 27 chiefs. So they've all had the opportunity to go through. So I think we're just going to do the captain's cohort next year, and we'll do another chief's cohort in 2025. Upgrading fire station alerting systems. Right now we have I won't call it an offer, but a deal moving through to put that into the capital funds to upgrade our fire station alerting systems. This is important for two reasons. One, it will help reduce our response times because with these new systems, the dispatch will come straight from the call taker to the station, and crews will be dispatched right away. We can kind of cut out the middle person, and that as it works right now, the call taker puts in the information, transfers it to the fire dispatcher. Fire dispatcher has to open up the station, manually send the, dispatch the rigs, and then the rigs are able to respond. So that doesn't take a long time, but seconds matter. So we think that'll knock off probably 17 to 20 seconds, which doesn't sound a lot, but it's actually everything. That will probably take us from meeting our goal of getting there in 5 minutes or less, at least 90% of the time. Right now, we're making it about 60 to 65% of the time. That'll probably bring us pretty close to that 90. Our overall response time is about 5:09 to 5:17, depending on the month. So that actually have a huge impact. And finally, secure a new home for fire engine 10. I know that's not going to happen. Well, it could happen in 24. I know we won't be ready to move in 2024. But we have identified it's the old Fire Station 10 is something that we'd like to pursue. It's currently the first precinct. And so once the first precinct moves out, we'd like to reacquire it and renovate it and turn it back into Fire Station 10 once more. So I think that is it. So I will stand for questions.
Vice Chair Payne, thank you, Chief, for the presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a lot of questions about our opioid response and the role a fire department plays. So my first question is, do we have any early insights into our Safe Station program? I know it's very early in the pilot stage, but I'm hoping to see if there's any successes we can build on when it comes to expansion. And then a related but different question is around Narcan. My understanding is we're going to have a pilot of Narcan being available at, I think maybe Station 21. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but can you just kind of give me a roadmap on how we're thinking about fire department's role and our opioid response?
Yes. So first I'll start. We do carry Narcan, and we have for quite some time now as part of our medical complement whenever we respond. So we're able to deliver Narcan when needed. Ours is a nasal version, but it's been very effective. Safe Stations has been very successful. It's actually been building up month after month, getting more and more traffic. Twin Cities Recovery Project does a really good job of getting out and doing community engagement to let people know that the Safe Station is there and what services are available. So that's actually been doing very well. We get monthly reports, and the traffic has been growing month after month. So the third project you were talking about is a project that we're doing in partnership with Health, and actually we're just providing a location. Health is doing it. But what they're talking about doing is buying basically vending machines that they would stock with Narcan for free. You just come up, push the button, and get it, and make that available to the community. So Fire Station 21 is our first location that they want to put it at, but there will be other locations within the community that are not fire stations also, so that won't be the only place. But I think that'll be a really good thing to be able to make that available to anyone who needs it, and most importantly, for free.
No, that's really exciting. I'm going to switch gears a little bit. And I want to talk about the EMS Pathways Academy. One idea that I was trying to float last year was around a rotation program so that all of Office of Community Safety would have career pathways into fire, police, 911, emergency management. Would this current Pathways program be well suited for that kind of concept, or would you envision something completely separate and apart from our EMS Pathways program for that kind of idea?
Yep. So this is something I have thought about too. I think the model would be good. I think the specific program won't fit because I don't know that there's any other city departments that would need EMT. But if you expanded it out And I've even thought about maybe doing this as a high school kind of magnet program. I don't know if they call them magnets no more, but I'm old. Where students could kind of at least be exposed to each one of those public safety things. I think that would be good. So I think the model definitely could work really for any of us. I don't know, needing EMT wouldn't be one thing. If you wanted to really delve into those other areas, you would have to expand the program out quite a bit. It's a 3-month program as it is now. But so to answer your question, yes, I think the model would work well with any of our public safety departments.
Well, let's have some continued conversations on that. It's obviously not going to happen overnight, but I think it's something that we should start directionally moving towards. So thank you.
Look forward to it.
Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chief, I'm smiling here when I saw your slide about Station 10. That's going to be so important as we continue to repopulate, grow the population in the downtown west area, and that station will give the confidence to the private sector that the emergency services will be available for their future residents. So thank you.
I would agree. And, it's already in a pretty good location in a busy area, so I think it will help our response times to service those customers or those residents also. So
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Chief.
Okay, then I'd like to hand it over to Assistant Chief Katie Blackwell. She's behind me. She's hiding.
Sorry, Chief. All right. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, council members, Commissioner. I'm Katie Blackwell. I'm the Assistant Chief of Operations. Chief O'Hara couldn't be here today, and he is at the last portion of his FBI National Academy, but he wanted me to express to you that if there's anything you need him to come back for to clarify or have a conversation, he's more than willing to do that. So the topics of discussion is department staffing, the citywide overview on crime data, the gun crime snapshot, and ongoing work that we're doing with public safety efforts, reorganization, implementation unit, and community engagement. So this is our staffing breakdown. Our authorized strength is 888. Our current sworn personnel is at 586 right now. If you take out those that are on personal leave and in the police academy, we have 572. If you remove those that are on light duty or on some type of FMLA leave, we have a total of 515. So this is our violent crime data. If you'll see, there's homicide non-negligent, and then there's homicide negligent. So I just wanted to make sure you understood, because sometimes there's confusion around what those are. So the negligent homicides are basically caused by negligence of the individual's action that you usually see, like in a car accident, a fatality that ends from that. And then the non-negligence is traditional homicides that are intentional actions caused by a perpetrator. So I wanted to highlight that homicides are down 34%, assaults, slight increase at 3%, robberies are down 25%, and one of the most significant decreases is carjacking is down 46%, and then gun violence overall is down 30%. For our property crime data, our burglaries are down 2%. I want to talk about auto thefts versus carjackings because there's some confusion around that sometimes. So auto theft, when a vehicle gets stolen, it's considered a property crime. Carjacking involves, it's a violent crime, and that's where we count our numbers because it's much more serious. It generally involves somebody that's in a vehicle that gets their car stolen from them. And then theft is down 20%. We're seeing an uptick in destruction of property at 17%. This is a graph of our guns recovered across all 5 precincts. Year to date, a total of 782 guns have been recovered from the city. The biggest precincts that they're recovering guns from is Precinct 4 and Precinct 1, so Northside and downtown. And then the graph on the bottom right shows a breakdown of where we are recovering most of those guns from traffic stops, and then it goes down suspicious vehicles, recovered property, shootings, and persons with a gun. So our Safe Summer overview that went from June to August, we have a lot of talented crime analysts and a lot of really hardworking investigators and officers out there that the crime analysts use data and human intelligence to determine where we're going to focus our resources at. And a big part of that is deploying citywide REACT teams. I think you're familiar with the REACT teams. Basically, a couple cops from every precinct work together with the gun investigation unit, and they go hit the hot spots, the REACT team does, in the high crime areas. And then the Guardian beats are our specialty teams, our investigative units that are all hands on deck will go out. They pick one day a month, right, where they'll go out and do high visibility patrols where we need them. And then ongoing partnerships with local, state, and federal law enforcement partners. But I'd be remiss to say that our community partners throughout the summer were, and still now are incredible at helping us reduce crime. And then a big thing was the U.S. Attorney's Office. We've expanded that program. We've added 2 MPD investigators over there that are assisting as a liaison with federal prosecutors and federal partners. So here are the outcomes. We conducted 14 days of focused enforcement details, where we recovered 109 firearms, 248 arrests, 9 ounces of cocaine, 12 ounces of meth, and 3,000 fentanyl pills. So the Safe Summer Impact, this is victims of shooting count from June 1st to August 31st this year. The overall decrease is consistent when comparing year-to-date decreases. Starting to see an increase in the 3rd precinct, and that was related to a couple multiple mass shooting incidents in August. But we're continuing to see decrease in precincts that historically we've seen increases in during the summer months. So I'm going to talk about the department reorganization. And when I say reorganization, Chief O'Hara made some significant changes. And when I say significant, I'd say historical. 19 out of our 23 command staff and above are in new positions. And we're working together as one team and one vision under his vision. And the big thing, he wanted more oversight and accountability. So there's 2 assistant chiefs, myself of operations, and then Assistant Chief Gators with community trust. And then we have 5 deputy chiefs that oversee 5 separate bureaus: internal affairs, professional standards, patrol, constitutional policing, and investigations. Some significant policy changes, just not all year of these policy changes. This is just in the last 6 weeks, a lot of these new policies, and then some a few months back, that I want to highlight. The 40 millimeter policy. So I wanted to say, too, is that Chief O'Hara is committed to culturally changing this organization and working with the settlement agreement. And with all the new command staff on board, several of these policies that are being implemented from all, but we're helping enforce these policies. But the 40 millimeter was a verbiage change. So officers are only able to use them to protect the officer, the subject, or another from objectively imminent substantial bodily harm. So substantial bodily harm was added to this. Oops, sorry, they're on the same page. The hobble, the chief has removed the use of the hobble of any type for our officers. And then a new policy is neglected duty. Employees shall not commit any act or omission that constitutes neglected duty. So they shall not deliberately delay services or compromise internal and external stakeholder and community relationship building. Another new policy is insubordination. We've had some of these under our professional code of conduct, but we really wanted to stress to our supervisors that by doing this, we also had to update the discipline matrix, that you can be relieved of duty or face immediate suspension or suspension of off-duty employment privileges up into termination. And then malignment and misinformation. The chief personally has heard from a lot of elected officials, not a lot, I should say a couple, about misinformation related to officers that provided misinformation out there. And he wanted to take a strong stance with this policy and send a message to our personnel, even though he hasn't seen any evidence of it, but he takes those concerns very seriously. So the message is that, every officer has constitutional rights, but wearing this uniform, we expect you to be more professional and strengthen partnerships with our internal and external stakeholders. So this policy, basically, employees shall not publicly criticize or ridicule the department, its policies, the city, another employee, an elected official, or a member of the public or other employees in performance of their duties in a manner which is defamatory, obscene, unlawful, or in a manner which displays a reckless or knowing disregard for the truth. They also should not knowingly disseminate verbally, in writing, or electronically any false information or unverifiable or unsubstantiated rumors or gossip about the department, city officials, another employee, elected officials, member of the public in the same kind of defamatory or obscene manner. Another significant policy change was off-duty timekeeping. So our officers currently keep record in our electronic record system. But recently we were able to, Chief O'Hare was able to get a policy out there that says you must track your off-duty time, which is significant for our supervisors to see just how much our officers are working, and for us as a command team to double check and verify how much they're working. And then scene and calls for service. We respond to incidents, sometimes they're emergencies, but the chief really wanted us to do our best to move your vehicle, a squad car, as soon as possible to not block the roadway for the community. And then a significant one too that I apologize I didn't get on here was cameras on SWAT helmets. SWAT operators are now required to have cameras on their helmets, and it's the same policy that falls inconsistent with our body-worn camera policy. And the last one was ballistic shields that we put out in the precincts and brought into the department. It's not only the safety of officers, but safety of the public if our officers have to rescue an injured person or evacuate innocent individuals. Right now, I'd like to turn it over to Commander Yolanda Wilkes, who's going to talk about our implementation unit.
Thank you. I apologize in advance if I get this wrong, Madam Chair, council members.
Got it.
I'll be talking about the implementation unit and kind of where we're at right now. Per the settlement agreement, we were tasked with, the first thing was holding those community engagement sessions, and we have done so within 60 days of that agreement. But more than just holding those community engagement sessions according to the agreement, we wanted to go beyond that and ensure that we were getting everyone's input and just not the sessions that we did or conducted according to the agreement. Every one of those sessions turned out, in my opinion, to be fairly okay. The feedback we received was a ton of information, a ton of useful information, and just kind of got the opportunity to hear the hearts of the community. And one of the things that was really appreciated was that the support of the chief, just being alongside of us in each and every one of those meetings, or the majority of those meetings, and being present to answer questions when needed. He's been there for every meeting. He's opened up with me, and they got along. The community had the opportunity to see that we were working together towards the same goal. What I heard from the community was that, from different specified communities, is we didn't have it in certain locations. And before we planned the community engagement sessions, we did it according to the agreement. It was said that we were supposed to hold them in an open space at a certain place where it was open, where everyone, it was at a central location where everyone had the opportunity to come to that place, and that's why we designed it the way that we initially did so. But in addition to those, we also started to plan culturally specific community sessions afterwards so that we can hit those communities who felt like their voices wasn't heard, or they were isolated, or that they didn't have an opportunity to come to these community engagement sessions, or then feel safe to share their voice or opinions. And so we completed those initial engagement sessions. We also have an additional 6 that are coming up. We have tentative locations already planned. We've talked to organizations who are allowing us to come into that space, but we're also still confirming other locations that have not gotten back to us yet. Simultaneously, we also have to hold those internal engagement sessions with our officers. Initially, those sessions were put on hold just because of staffing reasons. We were able to start those back up on the 26th of this week. So currently we have the community engagement sessions started back. We're starting those October 10th, tentative for October 10th, and those are specified communities that we have to, and we also have to give the opportunity for those guys to provide feedback. We're coming up with a system on how that feedback will be digested and regurgitated and brought or presented to the community, so we're in the process of doing that right now. And that's kind of where we're at right now as far as the beginning stages of the agreement.
I think we have a couple questions. Vice Chair Payne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This might be for AC Blackwell. My hope and belief, but it might be more hope than belief, I'm not sure, is that as a city, we're ready to have a more grounded and mature conversation about public safety. We've been through a lot together. We've all been traumatized in all aspects of the city and all aspects of society, frankly, since 2020. And I'd like to think that we've grown to some extent and are able to have a much more productive conversation. I use that as a context setting because I do feel that when we are in these heightened states of trauma, it kind of reduces our ability to think more expansively. So we overly simplify things. And we overly simplify things to good and evil or things of that nature. Now that we're at this different place where I think we have a little bit more room to think more critically, we're looking at things like the size of our police force and really, really good trends in crime. And I think anybody who's thinking critically recognizes that crime trends are very complex. They are the state of the economy. They are the state of our education system, things happening internationally, food prices, you name it, there's all kinds of factors that will lead to crime. When we were at our most traumatized state, our only cause-effect question was around staffing levels. And now we're seeing there's like this completely disconnected relationship between our staffing levels and our crime rates. And I want us to have, as a city, a much more sophisticated conversation about that. And I'm hoping that you might be able to shed some insight into your perspective on how our staffing is related to some of these really great improvements in crime. And I know that there are initiatives that are very targeted around that sound to be quite effective. But there's also other factors that are probably completely outside of anyone within these four walls' control. So I'm just curious about what your perspective is on that.
It's a great question, Madam Chair, Councilmember Payne. So I think the numbers are obviously critical. I think our department is facing a significant burden to the point where cops are getting tired. We're able to operate this at this level, I think, because we have very talented leaders that we have to be very strategic and deliberate about where we're placing our resources. Even though crime's down, even though one crime is one too many, we still have crime. And I think when we have additional staffing numbers help build that back up, then cops won't have to work that much overtime, as well as building that back up because investigations, for example, takes a lot more time to complete investigations, and we need investigations, and we need more of them. They're getting burned out too, and we're relying on a lot of external partners that are helping us, that help. So it's easy to say, look at all this crime reduction. We're only doing it with 515 cops on duty, but really we're relying a lot more heavily on external partners that are temporarily with us, whether they're civilians or they're temporarily with us for the summer events, and then just being more strategic. But if we continue to push our officers at this level, much like 911 call center, right? You start to have a burnout, and that's where you start having more complaints on officers, or possibly use of force incidents or mental health and all these things that associate with it. I'm confident that AC Gators and his recruitment team will continue to not only recruit members from Minneapolis that share our love for Minneapolis, as well as outsiders coming in. But I think it's critical that we have to rebuild because our people are suffering such fatigue, if you will. Did that answer your question?
Half of it. The other half is, maybe any insights into operations that you think are being most effective in terms of getting those numbers down.
Oh, operations as far as crime going down?
Yeah.
I think it's a really interesting, unique thing that when COVID hit, a lot of officers, like a lot of employees that were sent home, but a lot of officers, young officers in particular, were not getting the experience they needed on the street doing what they were doing. And training stopped temporary as well, like everywhere. And now that we have this new REACT team, and you have some experienced officers that are teaching these younger officers how to do this police work, what right looks like, how do you do it by policy, how do you do it by state statute, building that experience And by taking those 2 officers from every precinct into one with more accountability and oversight and having this really heavy focus on where the crime is and what's driving that crime, getting rid of the problem. And then they go back out to those precincts 3 to 6 months later, and we grab 2 more officers. That experience alone is helping reduce some of that crime. And then just really following that crime-driven like data from our analysts that are saying this is the highest spots and really focusing on that. We've always been kind of crime data-driven, but technology is better. We have more crime analysts that are extraordinarily talented, so that really helps. And then the help of our partners.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
It's a related question, but different, but still associated with operations. We've had a very public conversation about the future of the 3rd precinct. I don't want to necessarily rehash that, but I'm wondering if you could help just give us a baseline understanding of what the expectations are on the day-to-day shift. Because my understanding is that if you're on shift, you shouldn't be anywhere near the 3rd precinct or whatever precinct your home base is. You should be at your assigned patrol. And I don't know if everybody recognizes those kind of operational details, and maybe I'm not understanding it accurately either. I'm wondering if you just help, not just for myself, but even for the public, understand just kind of what those expectations are when you're out on patrol.
So the expectations that's a great question, and Madam Chair, Council Member, and so the expectations for patrol officers, they come in, the roll call, right, they get accountability piece, who's here, here's your assignments. And then they go out to their districts, they're assigned, each precinct is split up into generally 3 to 4 districts, and they're assigned to that sector so that every sector is covered. And then sometimes we have a citywide car that, or not citywide, precinct-wide car that will help, if a district car gets tied up for a certain neighborhood on a police call, then a citywide, or precinct-wide will help out fill that gap. And so when they're out there, oftentimes, so they might have to property inventory items, so they have to come back to the property inventory room. They might have to stop at Hennepin County Jail or the hospital. They might have to stop by the precinct to have a break, and then, or they might have to do police reports. So they do come back to the precinct to do their police reports. It's easier to sit down on a computer and focus on that than in your squad car trying to, and they have the ability to do that in their squad car, but in some areas they have to find a safe environment to do that. And so they are allowed to go back to the precinct, and it's a responsibility too. If they're doing a police report and there's a priority 1 call that comes out, they have to start heading to that priority 1 call.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Councilmember Walmsley.
Thank you, Chair Vita. Also, thank you, Councilmember Payne, for that opening around the correlation between staffing levels and the decreases that we're seeing in crime. But also, I think it's important to add to this conversation of even, let's look at our peak of when we were at 800 plus officers several years ago. What we also saw in that is it does not correlate to community safety. And that's what the DOJ and the MDHR report also confirmed of. Even at that level, we saw heightened levels of violence, racism, and misogyny being targeted to the residents of Minneapolis. So that's also a big component of this conversation. And also knowing the same dynamics that you emphasize. I remember at that time, former Chief Arredondo mentioned we needed 1,200 officers because of overtime or burnout, the same dynamics we're hearing right now. And how that even led prior to George Floyd, the shooting and killing of Justine Damon. So just knowing too, again, like we have to balance the realities that were extensively detailed in these investigative reports as we're also factoring into staffing. And I wanted to hold that in addition to this really, I think, necessary conversation around what it means for staffing going forward and how we're changing our vision around public safety, especially now that we have an Office of Community Safety. And I mentioned this earlier with 911, but I think the goal is to remove problem nature codes away from law enforcement so you all can do that targeted work, just like what we did with BCR. The staffing study or problem nature code study showed that mental health calls weren't necessarily being responded to in a meaningful way by law enforcement, and we used that data point as a basis to form a really awesome new program that the DOJ and DHR has absolutely commended the city for doing and saying, do more of that. So I think the goal is also to remove more things off your plate and use it as an opportunity or a springboard to invest in the comprehensive public safety personnel that we're still very much anemic in developing. So I'm really excited to hear later, and I do have to miss that component from Interim Sheehy of how we're repurposing positions to be able to lead that work and working with Dr. Oftelli in the Safe and Thriving report, or Safe and Thriving Communities report, to really hone in on that so we can also, again, make your workload less burdensome. But with that, I did want clarification between what authorized strength is. I know that 731 figure that's listed, that is mandated by our charter, the staffing minimum, that's grounded in the 2020 census data, so that's still relevant. But interested to know what determines the authorized strength number.
I believe it's in the city charter, but I would have to follow up with that.
From my understanding, it's not. The charter now, the staff minute is 731. So again, how did we get to the 888?
Let me try to say.
Chair Vita, Councilmember Wansley, I believe, so the 731 number is the ratio set forth in city charter, so it's based on census data. I believe the 888, I think, I want to say that corresponds to budget. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but I'm 90% sure that correlates to budget. We can follow up on that if that's helpful.
It would be good, since we're putting this in public materials, to be able to have a reference point of why we're reporting our authorized figure if we don't know what's determining it, even though we know we must meet the 731. So it would be good to have that follow-up of how we got there. Also, couple of questions on the new and updated policy. So it's great to hear that there's a new data tracking system for off-duty work. Is there any data points to assess our compliance rate or officers' compliance rate in providing that information into the system?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Wansley, I guess I didn't understand the question specifically.
So the new off-duty tracking system that you're rolling out, is there any data around compliance of officers, making sure they're entering their off-duty hours into that system?
So Madam Chair, Councilmember Wansley, so we have the ability to pull that data at any time and view it, and that's supervisors' responsibilities as well as us as command and executive command teams. And we will look at that and we can find out if somebody is not, there is definitely a way to look at that.
Okay, and just getting a sense of now, are we at 80%, 90%? How well are officers taking into this new practice of entering their data in regularly? And also, if there's any policies that guides, what happens when officers don't? I don't know if there's anything in the discipline matrix. Is there any policy that guides that also, if they're not entering their work?
Madam Chair, Councilmember, I can dig into the particulars, but generally what we see is, because it is a new policy, right? But generally what we see is if an officer's not doing it, we find out because it's newer, we will give them an opportunity to correct themselves. But at some point, yes, they can face discipline.
Okay. And also, because we've gotten questions about this too, as it pertains to off-duty. Do you know if staffing schedules are created with off-duty hours in mind?
Madam Chair, Councilmember, I'm sorry, I didn't understand your question.
Okay, I can try to reframe it. So does MPD rely on off-duty officers being able to respond to calls when making staffing schedules?
Madam Chair, Councilmember, so they do.
Okay.
We have supervisors exhaust all means, meaning if our precinct shifts are short, then the supervisors should look at all options. And so generally what we see if we have to pull off duty, it's some significant event or incident that's going on, that's where we'll pull them. We generally hold over shifts, or we pull off duty cars or those on buyback first, but we have the ability to do that.
Okay, that's good to know. And then some of the other components that you mentioned, like changes around neglect of duty, are there some examples? And I believe this might be public somewhere if council could receive a copy of it, but was really excited to see that piece and want to know if there was like any examples that you could share around that one.
Madam Chair, Councilmember Wansley, I think one of the bigger things is sometimes what we see is an officer will stack 7 reports because they're so busy. Then at the end of their shift, they might put themselves out of service to try to catch up on the other reports, but a priority 1 might come out. So we're saying, yeah, you're gonna have a lot of reports, but you need to pull yourself off of that and go answer the call.
Awesome. Okay, that's good to know. And
Councilmember
Yes.
Wansley, can this be the last question, please? We're about 7 minutes away from 4 o'clock, and I want to get to other council members.
Sure, absolutely. I have one more question. In terms of mandatory reporting, is there any policies guiding, for instance, if officers are witnessing, another officer engaging in misconduct? Is there any policies that guide you must mandatorily report that?
Madam Chair, Councilmember Wansley, there is a couple that one that comes to mind is the duty to intervene policy, where they have to mandate things, report it, or intervene, right? And so that one's probably the biggest one that I can think of that covers it. It's also Minnesota state statute and required by Minnesota Post Peace Officer Standards of Training.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can look that up. That's public information.
All right, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Councilmember Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one, an observation and then a question. On the new policies, I just wanted to say I really appreciated seeing the hobble policy on there. You know, things like the hobble are not anything that council members or the public are going to come into contact with on a regular basis. But, I know that when it does come up, it's usually in the form of a news story or something that's been done with it that now the community has to be exposed to and respond to. And so I remember when it came up a couple months ago when I was talking with the chief, and I just know that the hobble was rarely used. It was often misused, those types of things. And so given that council or the mayor or we're probably never going to be thinking, oh, the hobble, you guys should do something about that. It's one of those policies that you all as the subject matter experts are going to know, oh, this is a problem. And so seeing that is something that you guys are responding to is really encouraging. So I just wanted to name that. It might be a small example, but I wanted to name that. And there were a couple of new policies that I thought in that vein that were really got us headed in the right direction. I do get a lot of questions from residents around, at least an actual or perceived relaxation of the pursuit policy. And so just wondering if the pursuit policy has been relaxed, in what way, it comes up when, cars either crash or folks are injured in the event of a chase. And so I get a lot of conversations about it. I get a lot of questions about it, and just wanted to see if that's a policy that you all and the chief are looking at to either re-strengthen, or I guess, has it been relaxed? What are some of the dynamics? What are some of the things that people should be knowing when they are encountering or reading about a potential police pursuit?
Madam Chair, Councilmember, that's a great question, and we often get asked that a lot. And so what we try to do as a police department, I don't think we relaxed our policy. I've been around for 23 years now, and I've seen it more restrictive than ever before. A recent change that the chief put out was that individuals driving around that were firing off guns, that's reckless cause for harm for the public. So he included that to be a part of that pursuit policy. We do our best as a police department to rely on a lot of different support, if you will, to try to alleviate crashing. That's the last thing we want, is to injure anyone of the public. And so it's really restrictive around property crimes, pretty much can't chase, right? It's the violent offenders, and then we'll try to also use air support or things like that so we can back off and slow things down and try to, and if it gets too reckless, part of our policy is that you have to, discontinue that chase or terminate that chase.
Wanted to ask just for clarity, because I do get a lot of questions about it. So thank you for the answer, and appreciate the conversation today. But otherwise, appreciate most of the work that I've seen. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you, Councilmember Ellison. Councilmember Rainville.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assistant Chief Blackwell, is it true that the ratio of sworn officers to citizens in Minneapolis is the lowest of any major city in the United States of America?
Madam Chair, Councilmember, I'd have to double check those numbers. I've been told that, but I haven't been able to verify that.
Okay.
So I think Chief O'Hare would know better.
Well, ask him, but I think
I
it
will.
is. I think we're very, very low. And when you talk about the decrease in crime rates, which is great, we're still above the 2019 crime rate, correct?
Correct, just in, Madam Chair, Councilmember Rainville, we're still 42% increased in like gunshot wound victims, 2019, even though we're decreasing now, we're still above 2019 numbers.
Correct, thank you. And then an opinion I'm asking of you, the 6,000 plus car thefts we've had this year, if we had more investigators, more patrol officers, more staff in general, we could reduce those car thefts?
Madam Chair, Councilmember, yes, that is a true statement. Our property crimes investigators they have a lot of cases, and there's so many cases regarding auto thefts, it's difficult to keep up with at times.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Rainville. I just had a quick question. You know, I found the slide around the policy changes interesting, but I'm wondering, is there a plan for council members and, I mean, just the public to know about these things in real time? A lot of this stuff I've had people ask me about, you know, in my ward or by email or phone, and you know, most of it I wouldn't know about until today when you just presented in the committee. So just wondering if there's a plan, and maybe this is a conversation with the chief, but for us to know, because these things happened internally. This happened with the chief. They didn't. I think the average person thinks policy comes through the council, you know, like we vote on it, and it didn't. So just wondering if there's a plan for things to happen in real time for us to be notified.
Madam Chair, I know Chief O'Hara is planning to put the 40 millimeter policy out in through the Public Information Office, but I can speak with him about letting all of you know more quicker in real time. A lot of these policies were in effect like the last 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. They've been coming out pretty quickly, but I will for sure and talk to Chief O'Hara about making sure you are overseeing these, are seeing them. But I know you don't approve them, but you should know of them.
Yes.
Most policies are open to public, and I don't know if they're updated quick enough for public view yet.
Thank you so much for that, Assistant Chief. I don't see any more questions for you up here.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
I have to, quick turn it over to Assistant Chief Gators. Last slide is community engagement you wanted to discuss.
We're gonna have to end this because, well, no, we still have 4. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair and committee council members. I will be very quick. Just wanted to give you an update and overview on our community engagement efforts as far as we continue to build trust with community members and reduce crime and build reputation for our police department and within our police department for instilling pride within the ranks for working with the Minneapolis Police Department. So as far as our efforts with community, as you've most likely heard through your constituents, is with our Police Activities League, our PAL program. We did reinstitute that, and we have started a pilot program which has been going on, trying to reestablish that program when hearing from the citizens. That pilot program included bringing in educational facilities as well, where they are actually given the opportunity for officers to go out and speak with kids, engage with kids with reading with the children, and also engaging in sports activities with the children. Along with that, the kids also have been taken, and I think of myself when I was a child, with little opportunities to experience certain things outside of my own community, where these kids are being taken out to learn how to ice skate. And also the mounted patrol experience will be coming for them as well, where they get to go out and engage with the mounted patrol team and actually get on horses and ride them and have that experience as well. So it's another way of building trust in a holistic way with our youth very young, as they continue to grow and keeping that trust and bond with the kids as they could continue to grow into adults. We also have, as most of you have heard over the summer, the Pathways program, the PEACE program. That program has completed its summer phase, where we had 31 interns, one of those which was a person who was from a historically black college and university down south. And this person came up to our program, was an intern through the summer. And the great thing about the partnership with that internship piece with Step Up is that the HBCU intern actually went back to school now and has worked on through her university with joining us and teaming up with us to come down to her university and be a part of the job career fair down there. And she is going to actually bring people in to participate with that. So I think that's a great opportunity to not only as we try to give opportunities with kids inside the city to become police officers, but also externally outside of our state for those who have an interest or vested in the community here in Minneapolis to be to serve as law enforcement officers. Along with that trust piece, finally, is the community MSTAT piece that we have. MSTAT is something that we do internally, typically, and that holds our officers and our command staff accountable for strategies that we implement. We have now taken it out to the community and given them the opportunity to participate as listeners and viewers to understand more of how we implement strategy and try to combat criminal activity within the city of Minneapolis to reduce crime, and also along with that engage with the community and build that trust. So to be brief, as I said I would be, that is a quick update on where we are with the community engagement piece. At this point, I'll turn it over to Director Nelson Brown to continue.
Chair Vita and council members, thank you so much. I am Luana Nelson Brown, Director of the Neighborhood Safety Department. Happy to be with you. I will try to be as brief as possible. I know we are at time. I just wanted to start with a real quick, brief recap of where we have been up until now. As you all know, the Department of Neighborhood Safety was previously the Office of Violence Prevention within the health department. And as part of the government restructure, we moved out of the health department into the Office of Community Safety as the Neighborhood Safety Department. And I bring that up because it's going to come into play as I continue forward. The Office of Violence Prevention used public health approaches to help reduce the impact of violence on our communities. As Neighborhood Safety Department, we fully intend to keep that. It is a best practice, and it is what has been shown nationwide to reduce crime. So while we're not in the health department, we do continue to use a public health approach. As the Office of Violence Prevention and now, the majority of our initiatives are indeed violence prevention. And what that means is that those initiatives work best through the building of relationships and building community. We build and operate local versions of evidence-informed strategies and best practices, and we do that by partnering with local community-based organizations to develop those innovative strategies. In a nutshell, we're guided by evidence, driven by community, and rooted in collaboration. Oh, that's not working, okay. What we have here is a snapshot of our current organizational structure. This is what our org chart looked like as the Office of Violence Prevention. And as we move from an office within a department to a full department, this will have to look different. It worked well when there was the support, thank you, when there was the support of the full health department, but we are now without that support. So what I've been doing over the last 60 days since I've been here is starting to analyze what's missing and what we need, and then capitalize on the strengths that we have. So we're pretty strong on programming, but what we're missing is that admin piece. We're missing outcome measurement and data analysis and research, and some of those pieces were provided in health that we're missing now. So my goal for Q4 is to maximize our current resources as I continue to plan this out for the future. So just wanted to give you kind of an update on that. Also, over the last 60 days, I've been doing a lot of observation and have noticed some service gaps. So, as I mentioned, violence prevention is where we're heavy on our programming, and that takes time, the development of relationships and community, those initiatives. But what we're getting a lot of requests for, and I've seen it in just my 60 days, is for more of community emergency response or community first response. And the BCR program, Behavioral Crisis Response Program, is an excellent example of that. The difference would be our violence prevention programs, they do not respond to calls immediately. BCR does. So as we start to look at BCR, it is a specific response that they do, so specific to mental health. But the question is, what are those other best practices and models that do the same type of response for different types of situations? And that is a gap that I think our department can fill, that we'll be looking at as we move forward beyond Q4. It does present a big opportunity for us here in the city to not only adopt more models, but maybe even customize and create models that could then be something that could be duplicated in other cities as well. Some of the challenges that I've seen over the last 60 days have really been centered around that becoming a full department and ensuring that we have the resources necessary. One of the issues that we've experienced already that I'll continue to keep a close eye on and get ahead of instead of experiencing it on the back end is our grant eligibility. There are some of the grants that we applied for as a Department of Health that we won't qualify for as neighborhood safety. So far, this has only happened once, and we were able to find a substitute grant. So this is something in Q4 that I'll be keeping my eye on to get out in front of so that I'm not back before you with any issues. Also, some of the challenges is aligning our staff, our processes, our procedures for efficiency, ensuring that as we grow as a department within a brand new office, that we're in full alignment with what the city wants and the city needs and the community is asking for, and that we're as efficient as possible in the work that we do. And then also maximizing our current resources. So these are all goals that I'm looking at for Q4 and beyond. Real quick update on our Q2 and Q3 and then what it looks like in Q4 by initiative. And I won't go through them all because we'll be here for another hour. And I don't want that. Our MVPCC program has done lots of training, spotlight training. This is focused on youth and youth prevention. The staff that oversees that program will be presenting at the APHA conference in November. Our Next Step program, which does hospital-based advocacy, so they show up right at bedside at the hospital to provide services, has expanded to a 4th hospital, and they continue to do ongoing treatment to survivors, of violence at our 4 partner hospitals right now. Our Minneapolis Strategic Outreach Initiative, also known as Violence Interrupters, is expanding their training for their teams. They have been administering CPR and first aid and giving out Narcan. And what we are planning for Q4 is to prepare the new RFP to see what that looks like moving forward for the next year. And how do we want to categorize it and capitalize on what's worked and chew out what hasn't in the program, for lack of a better term. Community Navigators, this is a initiative that we received from MPD that now lives in our home. And they are the people who really are housed within MPD, but work strongly with the community. And so they answer a lot of questions. They respond to things that MPD may not be able to, and they help build community trust. They've had 2 vacant positions. We've hired one of the vacant positions. I think you all know that they are specific to communities. We are revising that slightly, but to ensure that there's cross-training so that multiple navigators can respond. And there is one vacant navigator position, I believe, in the East Asian community that we are in the final process of interviewing for right now. GVI, Group Violence Intervention, this focuses more specifically on gun violence and group violence. Our National Technical Assistance provider, John Jay College, came in to do an audit for us, and so they analyze all crime data across the city. We're waiting on the results of that audit, and I believe that is going to give us some valuable information on what initiatives should look like moving forward. And as well, it will drill down into specific areas of the city to see what these initiatives have looked like in the specific areas. In Q4 and beyond, we're doing a hard reset of this program, and that is at the suggestion of John Jay. This particular program requires heavy collaboration, and I believe it was Councilmember Payne that mentioned earlier that a lot of people are traumatized still. So some of that collaboration has been a little bit difficult, a little bit rocky, but everyone is committed. So as we do a hard reset, we are going to focus on the trauma that people have experienced that can hinder collaboration and move forward. And we're going to look forward to those audit results. The Blueprint Approved Institute is our capacity building initiative. Many organizations come into the Institute with nothing but a 501c3 piece of paper in hand, and by the time they leave that institute, the goal is that they have learned the skills necessary to grow their budget and apply for funding in multiple areas. Oops, I went away too fast. Coming up, well, that says Q2, it should say Q4. We are releasing the RFP for a new cohort. Next year, we'll have one cohort with 16 organizations, and then we're also making some discussions about some changes that we can make to improve that program that has been pretty successful. So in conclusion, what the department has done department-wide in the last couple of quarters is we have wrapped up work on our community, office space. I think that Chair Vita may be looking at bullet number 2. We hired a fabulous director. Believe everything you hear about her. I hear she's amazing. And we've participated in transition for our new commissioner. So lots of change in the department, but we are ready to go. We are excited, and we're pulling together. Some of the focuses that I particularly have moving into Q4 can really be summed up in 3 bullet points. points. One is we're going to be looking at cataloging all of the violence prevention efforts across the city. We know that there are multiple efforts, some funded by the city, some not. Are we duplicating services? Are we collaborating with each other? You know, what makes up a good comprehensive program? So that starts with cataloging to see what's there. Second, we're going to build out a quality improvement plan. So we're going to be really focusing on outcomes and impact and what that looks like. You heard MPD mention violence or crime reduction across the board. Our question is, did that reduction happen in areas where we had violence prevention initiatives, alternative to policing initiatives? And if so, was there a greater reduction where those programs exist compared to areas where they don't? So we're starting there to really start to do a deep dive into what works and outcome measurement so that we can invest in those initiatives that are working and if possible, divest out of the ones that aren't. So that is point number 2. And then the third is building capacity, both in staff and in our grantees. We manage a ton of contracts because we are collaborative with the community. And as we move out of the health department, we are going to need the support that we lost to properly manage those contracts to ensure that we're in compliance. And since a lot of our grantees are brand new grantees, brand new organizations, we could help build their capacity as well, because managing public funds is a lot different than managing private funds. So capacity building for both our staff and our community members and grantees is another focus. And that is all I have for you today.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would usually have more questions, but I'm going to keep it very, very short, mostly just to a comment. First, welcome and thank you. And I don't know that you've been on that long. How many months has it been?
I just made 60 days.
Okay, all right.
And I wanted to thank you too. My second day, I know there was a council meeting and you gave me grace. You mentioned my name and said she has to be days on the job. So I've been wanting to formally thank you for that, because you were correct. It was day 2.
Well, thank you. And I just wanted to say I appreciate the presentation and you know, I've had some real fears around the longevity of this department. A lot of people, at least last term, worked really hard to create this create the division within the health department. Yeah. I think there's been a vision for this department to grow and be integrated, well-integrated part of our public safety system. I think that, like, you know, my more cynical impulses have been like wondering whether the institution is earnest about supporting you. I hope everyone is. I certainly am. And just wanted to say, you know, as you're moving forward, you know, if this department's probably going to require still more vision and building than most departments. Some departments can come in, they're well thought out, they're well built, they can just be managed. Yes. If you come in and you just manage this department, my fear is that having nothing to do with you, you'll just run it right into the ground, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so I hope that as you are thinking about your expertise that you're coming in with, your knowledge and your vision for the department, that you're really asserting that vision, having a growth mindset, having an abundant mindset, and not sort of a, you know, deficit thinking of like, okay, gotta figure out how to, you know, not bother people and make myself smaller. Yes. Really think you're really going to have a vision for this department. So anyway, just wanted to say that and appreciate so far the presentation. I'll probably have follow-up questions, but we have been here quite a long time. Yeah. I know I've got meetings that I've been trying to push back every 15 minutes, and I'm sure my colleagues do as well. Yes. So I'll leave it at that. But thank you so much, and it's great to see you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Vice Chair Payne.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Everything Councilmember Ellison said, and I just really want to work closely with you. You know, you're building, or even just trying to maintain what was already an early project around OVP to become something much more expansive. Mm-hmm. And I recognize the level of work ahead. And I just want to assure you that I'm supportive of that work. I want to work with you
Thank you.
in developing that. I helped design BCR before I ran for council. It's an extraordinarily important program to me, and I want to see how we can build and expand not just BCR, but all of our alternatives. And a lot of that's going to be housed under you.
Yes.
However, you're still just trying to get the baseline OVP functionality stable. So I recognize that challenge, and this is just my invitation to work together as we grow from there.
Thank you so much for that. Both council members, if I can address at the same time, and Madam Chair, you are 100% correct. At this 60-day mark, it is necessary to get that baseline for what's here. It is obviously challenging working with a built process, a built enterprise that was not designed for a department such as this. And so it will likely take about 100 days for me to fully integrate in, and then I do promise you, making myself small is not an option. And that visioning will require the work of us all. So I really do appreciate all of the warm welcome and the support that you give, and I will be making my way around to you. So thank you so much. Thank you for that.
Thank you, and I just too wanted to say thanks for the presentation. I love where you're going with the department. It's it's good to hear you say you've been evaluating for 60 days, and also you see some opportunities for adjustments in the departments and growth, and maybe we scale back. That has always been a concern of mine, that each group we use does not need to show up exactly the same in every community, and so I was glad to hear you say that in the presentation. My office is here to help, so thank you so much, and welcome to Minneapolis.
Thank you, Chair Vita.
Yep. All right, I think this is
I made it?
You made it, yay. This is the final.
And it will be quick, much quicker than I planned. So, Chair Vito, members of the committee, persistent members of the committee, I'm going to focus on one thing, which is basically the transition, which I'm not going to outline, but I'd be happy to take questions from the standpoint of, well, I'll just put it this way. Judge Barnett has begun the transition. My responsibility, and I think I've said this in committees before, is to create a pathway, a bridge for Judge Barnett to understand the opportunities and challenges in the Office of Community Safety and its 5 departments. The first stop is the 13 members of the City Council. So that process is being led by the mayor, and it's underway. We're also providing briefings, opportunities to meet with each of the department heads with Judge Barnett before they sort of have to sit down and have a discussion with him about the job. So the other thing that I had promised 3 committee chairs, so I'm going to put it up on the slide, was the kinds of work as an interim commissioner is to set the commissioner up for success. And so what issues have I heard in my short tenure of importance? And I used a broad discussion of what the Office of Community Safety could look like, not committing the new commissioner, because I think that's his decision and job, and I started this discussion before, but I did say at actually probably 2 different committees that at this committee I would provide a draft of it, and so it is in the PowerPoint for those who've seen it, and I at least wanted to put it up for the public and to take any questions here. I think that if we take the point in time of a department, of an office, with the new department who was in office, we've had this as sort of a running dialogue, and together build the Office of Community Safety. There needs to be a starting point for, I'll say, an office that was founded, about a year ago, got a major report and thought piece in July, along with the council, and how to process that very much in the way that Director Nelson Brown has her sort of set of issues, which are really important to the concepts of vision and clarity and structure to engage on a design engaging community and in conversation about what the design is and begin implementation pieces. This org chart provides a structure that Judge Barnett has had one opportunity to see, and I told him that I would present it to the committee today as a draft for consideration as we work forward. So I know the hour. I'll be happy to take questions now. I suspect I'll get them later, but I don't want to not answer any questions right now that I can.
Councilmember Ellison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just real quick, I appreciate seeing the draft and the transparency. Usually we wouldn't have a draft on to the public, but I do appreciate that we're able to see it and the public gets to see how the sausage gets made a bit. I really do think it's minimal, but I really do think that the 5 departments that are sort of underneath the office, I envision them as underneath the commissioner.
So,
and so I just wanted to...
Oh, no. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Councilmember, that was why this first slide, which I went by very quickly, was because I have had that feedback that other times you've seen it, and that hasn't been the case. All 5 of the remaining department heads have seen this slide and had this discussion. There's no question in anybody's mind, I'm turning to department heads, but you actually have given me an opportunity to do a better job of communication, for which I'm always grateful. This is the approach that the commissioner sees underneath the commissioner for purposes of some of the issues like building out community safety, alternatives to policing. This is a structure that is supporting that work, which is, I would say, formative, but as important, listening to the committee today, as important as making sure that the 5 departments are supported in integrated work and mindful of the opportunities and challenges.
Thank you.
Thank you, Interim Director. We don't have a quorum anymore, so I'm going to, without objection, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Scraps to better use. What's your way, Minneapolis? Sign up at minneapolismn.gov.
My way is to do it every day.